Forget everything I knew about the CIA. Forget the handbooks, the oath, the layers of clearance, the idea that anyone in this agency was ever truly free. When you join the division, you surrender your name first, then your past, and eventually, if you're unlucky enough to survive, your soul. I was 27 when they erased me from the system. No farewell party, no debriefing, just a one-way elevator beneath the Langley archives that ended in a place not marked on any floor plan. I remember the hum of the fluorescent lights, the recycled air that smelled faintly of copper, and the sensation that I was stepping into a machine designed to consume people like me. My recruiter, Director Miles Donovan, was waiting for me behind a glass wall. He was a tall, gray-haired man with a voice that carried more gravity than the entire building above us. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. "Ethan Ward," he said, flipping open a manila folder. "Born in Richmond, Virginia. Parents deceased. Degrees in behavioral analysis and computational neuroscience. Top marks in situational ethics." He paused, tapping a photo paperclip to the file, my CIA ID badge. "You've always wanted to make a difference, haven't you?" I nodded, unsure whether it was a question or an accusation. He slid the file across the table. "If you step through that door behind me, you won't exist anymore. Your records, your digital footprint, even your fingerprints will vanish from federal databases. You'll work on missions that never happened, solve problems the world must never know exist. If you die off the books. No flag-draped coffin, no folded letter for next of kin, just nothing." His eyes narrowed, searching for hesitation. I didn't give him any. He leaned back, satisfied. "Good, because we have a problem that requires someone who still believes in what we're supposed to stand for." That was the first lie he ever told me. What followed were 6 months of training in a facility carved into the Appalachian rock, a black site so remote it was hidden behind a false mountain range on satellite images. We learned how to vanish in plain sight, to dismantle our own psychology before an enemy could, to read a man's guilt in the twitch of his eye. They broke us down into variables, patterns of thought and behavior that could be reprogrammed for obedience or erased for safety. I wasn't supposed to question why we trained with both combat medics and neuroscientists, why our weapons came with biometric locks, or why the instructors wore masks when administering exposure trials. But I did, and that's what got me noticed. 2 weeks before graduation, Donovan summoned me to the briefing room. The walls were bare steel, the only furniture a table bolted to the floor. He placed a black folder in front of me, stamped with a symbol I'd never seen before. Not the CIA crest, but an eye within a triangle fractured down the middle. "We call ourselves the Division," he said. "Officially, we don't exist. We answer to no branch of government, not anymore." He slid a photograph across the table. A man in his 40s with sharp features and pale eyes. Dr. Viktor Arsenyev, Russian biochemist. Disappeared from Novosibirsk 5 years ago. We have credible intel he's resurfaced in Eastern Europe, conducting unregistered research into neural behavior modification. I frowned. "You mean brainwashing?" "Not exactly. He's weaponizing emotion, hacking the human conscience itself. Think of a chemical that erases empathy, amplifies aggression, and spreads faster than the flu." A chill crawled down my spine. "A neurovirus?" Donovan nodded. "Codenamed Project Aeneid." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Ethan, we believe he's testing it on human subjects, civilians. You're being assigned to locate his operation and assess the threat. If confirmed, you'll neutralize it." Quietly. I didn't realize then how deeply that word neutralize would scar me. When I asked about my team, he shook his head. "This one's solo. You'll have a contact in the field, a liaison named Elena Kovac. Slovak intelligence, good instincts, but you'll handle infiltration alone. Understand, Ward, this is surgical. No backup, no extraction unless absolutely necessary. I stared at the photo of Arsenyev. There was something in his eyes that unsettled me. Not the madness of a fanatic, but the cold precision of someone who'd already accepted the cost of his work. "When do I leave?" I asked. "Tomorrow, and Ethan..." He hesitated, then added quietly, "Once you cross that border, you're not representing the United States. You're representing humanity itself. Don't fail it." That night, I stood in my quarters staring at the packed duffel bag by my bed. Inside it were false passports, encrypted comms, and a new identity card. Michael Carver, freelance journalist. My reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar under the harsh, white lights. My own eyes seemed older, haunted by a choice I hadn't fully made. Outside the facility, the Virginia night was thick with fog. I could still hear the hum of the generators as I boarded the unmarked transport plane. The engine screamed to life, drowning out any last thoughts of hesitation. I told myself I was ready. I told myself I was doing this for the greater good. But as the lights of Langley vanished below me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was flying straight into the heart of something ancient and wrong, something that had been waiting for me long before I was born. It wasn't until later, much later, that I learned the division didn't recruit people like me because of what we could do. They recruited us because of what we were willing to lose. And in my case, they were right. Before I continue, if you've made it this far, if this story already has you wondering what's hidden behind those locked government doors, I'd ask one thing. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next, because trust me, you'll want to hear the rest before they make me stop talking. The first thing that hit me when I landed in Prague wasn't the cold, it was the silence. There's a certain kind of quiet that only exists in foreign cities when you arrive under a false name. It's heavy, watchful, as if the air itself is listening. The streets glowed with a wet sheen from the rain, cobblestones reflecting neon signs in fractured colors. My cover identity, Michael Carver, freelance journalist, came with a set of forged credentials and an assignment letter from a fictional magazine. Everything looked real enough to pass inspection, even down to the fake editor's number on the card. Still, I could feel eyes on me. They always tell you in training that paranoia is a symptom of guilt. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes it's instinct trying to keep you alive. I checked into a small hotel overlooking the Vltava River. The clerk didn't ask for my passport. She didn't have to. The kind of people who stayed here never wanted questions. My room smelled faintly of old smoke and damp plaster. The heater rattled when I turned it on. As I unpacked, I reviewed the mission brief again on a secure tablet. Arsenyev's trail had gone cold in Slovakia 6 months earlier, after a series of unexplained blackouts near a research facility north of Bratislava. Satellite imagery showed heavy freight movement in and out of the region, but no official records of exports or staff. Rumors spoke of a new clinic funded by private donors, one that no journalist or investigator ever returned from. I was to meet my local contact, Elena Kovac, at a cafe near Wenceslas Square the following morning. The file described her as highly capable, but unorthodox. That was bureaucratic language for she doesn't follow orders. At dawn, I walked through the narrow alleys of the old town, the scent of roasted chestnuts mixing with the metallic tang of the river. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. A woman sat alone at the back table, her hair tied loosely, a leather coat draped over the chair beside her. She looked up as I approached, eyes sharp, assessing. "You're late," she said in accented English. I glanced at my watch. "It's 9 on the dot." I said 8:55. She gestured for me to sit. 5 minutes can be the difference between life and death in our line of work. That was her way of saying she was testing me. I decided to let her win the point. She slid a phone across the table. Encrypted, it connects only to me. You use it, you do so in emergencies. Otherwise, you disappear. Her gaze softened slightly as she studied me. You've never done fieldwork this deep before, have you? I've done my share of operations. Not like this one. She stirred her coffee. They don't send Americans here unless they're desperate or expendable. The word hit harder than I expected. Over the next 3 days, we traveled east by train, staying off major routes. Elena handled most of the logistics, bribes for border guards, coded messages to her contacts, the occasional diversion to mislead anyone tailing us. I watched her work with the efficiency of someone who'd lived too long with danger. On the third night, somewhere beyond Košice, the world outside our window turned wild and uninhabited. The rails cut through valleys blanketed in fog, the horizon swallowed by the Carpathian peaks. This is where we stop, Elena said quietly. The train slowed to a crawl. She motioned for me to grab my bag. We disembarked near an old freight platform, long abandoned. The sign was rusted and half covered in moss. A cold wind whistled through the trees. There was no one else around, just forest, rail lines, and the rhythmic echo of metal cooling on steel. This way, she whispered. We walked for miles through the woods, the path lit only by her flashlight beam cutting through the mist. My breath hung in the air like smoke. Somewhere in the distance, an animal cried, a long, low wail that didn't sound like anything I could name. Finally, we reached a ridge overlooking a valley dotted with faint yellow lights. Below us, a cluster of old buildings huddled together near a river bend. That's the village, she said. Population 200, maybe less now. People started leaving 2 years ago. Those who stayed changed. Changed how? You'll see. She wasn't wrong. When we entered the village the next morning, the atmosphere felt wrong. The air was too still, no birds, no dogs. The few villagers we passed avoided eye contact, hurrying across the muddy street as if afraid of being noticed. An old woman outside a boarded-up chapel crossed herself when she saw us. Don't go near the monastery, she whispered in Slovak. The dead don't sleep there anymore. Elena pretended not to hear. Superstitions, she muttered. They've always been afraid of what they don't understand. But even she didn't sound convinced. We rented a room above an old tavern run by a man named Pavel. He was broad-shouldered with a heavy accent and the kind of gaze that measured everyone entering his door. When he brought our meals, he kept glancing toward the north ridge, where the ruins of the old monastery stood silhouetted against the clouds. At dusk, heavy trucks rumbled past the village square, heading toward that same ridge. No company logos, no lights except for the dim glow of their tail lamps. I watched them from the window. You said the monastery was abandoned. It is, Elena replied, officially, but those trucks go there every night. What do they bring? She took a long drag from her cigarette before answering. Supplies, equipment, maybe people. Her tone made it clear she'd seen this before, somewhere, sometime, under a different name. We waited until midnight to move. The forest was pitch black, and the fog had thickened to the point that even the moon looked like a dying candle through it. We followed the dirt road leading up to the ridge, keeping low behind the trees whenever headlights approached. When we finally reached the top, I saw the monastery for the first time. Its stone walls rose out of the mist like a fortress built to keep heaven and hell from colliding. A metal fence surrounded the perimeter, topped with barbed wire. Through binoculars, I spotted cameras rotating silently, red lights winking in the fog. Inside the yard, a group of men in dark uniforms unloaded crates stamped with Cyrillic markings. Something about the way they moved, synchronized, emotionless, made my stomach tighten. Elena whispered beside me, "That's your confirmation. He's here." For a long moment, I couldn't look away from the building. I thought of Donovan's words, "You're representing humanity itself." But standing there in the cold, watching faceless men carry sealed crates into a forgotten monastery, I couldn't help but wonder if humanity had already lost. For the next 48 hours, we stayed hidden in a crumbling watchtower at the edge of the forest overlooking the monastery. From that vantage point, I watched everything: the arrival schedules, the guard rotations, even the way the floodlights blinked off for exactly 17 seconds between each power cycle. Elena recorded the footage through a modified infrared scope. I logged the timing patterns and transmission frequencies. The more we gathered, the more it felt like the monastery wasn't just being used as a research lab. It was being fortified, like a bunker preparing for siege. There was something else too, something subtle but deeply unsettling, a constant low hum that carried across the valley. It wasn't the sound of generators, it was deeper, almost organic, as if the earth itself was vibrating under the monastery's foundations. On the second night, while scanning the perimeter through my binoculars, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A man, or what looked like one, was being led out of the building by 2 guards. His movements were jerky, unnatural, as though his limbs were moving faster than his muscles could handle. He convulsed violently, trying to break free, but the guards dragged him to a truck and locked him inside. Even from a distance, I could see his eyes glinting under the floodlights, wide, unblinking, reflecting the beam like an animal's. "What are they doing to them?" I whispered. Elena's face was pale in the glow of the monitor. "You don't want to know." But I did want to know. I had to. That night, after the trucks departed, I couldn't sleep. The hum from the monastery seemed louder now, like it was pulsing in time with my heartbeat. The air smelled faintly metallic, as if charged with static. At some point, I realized Elena wasn't in the tower. I found her outside, standing at the tree line, staring down at the valley below. Her expression was unreadable. "You shouldn't wander alone," I said. She didn't turn around. "You think you came here to stop a monster," she murmured. "But what if your people helped create him?" I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Don't act surprised. You've seen the files, the funding trails. Do you really believe a single rogue scientist could afford all that equipment on his own?" I wanted to argue, but the words died in my throat. Somewhere deep down, I already knew she was right. The division's resources, their reach, their silence, it all pointed to something much bigger than one man's experiment. Elena finally looked at me, her eyes sharp in the moonlight. "If you keep digging, Ethan, you might find out that the division didn't send you here to stop him. They sent you to contain what they started." A gust of wind swept through the trees, scattering dry leaves across our boots. When I glanced back toward the monastery, the lights flickered, once, twice, and then the hum cut off completely. The sudden silence was worse than the sound itself. The next day, we hiked closer. Under the cover of thick fog, we crossed a stream that wound around the property's north side and found a service tunnel sealed with a rusted gate. Someone had welded a "Keep Out" sign to the bars, though the letters were nearly unreadable beneath the corrosion. Elena examined the weld marks. Old security, probably predates their occupation. We could cut through. We waited until nightfall. With a portable torch and sound-dampening sheet, we sliced through the metal and slipped inside. The tunnel reeked of damp stone and chemical decay. Drops of water echoed from somewhere deep ahead, rhythmic like a heartbeat. We moved in silence for what felt like half an hour until a faint light appeared at the end of the passage. Peering through a grated vent, I saw a corridor lined with reinforced glass rooms, laboratories lit with harsh, fluorescent lights. Figures in lab coats moved between tables cluttered with vials, machinery, and containment pods filled with milky liquid. Through one of the windows, I caught sight of something floating, a human silhouette suspended in fluid, its skin webbed with wires and veins that pulsed faintly with light. Elena's breath caught. Jesus! We backed away slowly, but before we could retreat, the lights flickered again, once, twice, and the hum returned, deeper now. Vibrating through the floor, somewhere inside the lab, an alarm beeped softly, then went silent. "They're starting another test," she whispered. I didn't answer. My focus had shifted to a side panel mounted near the vent. A series of symbols flashed across a digital interface, Cyrillic text overlaying English labels. I could make out fragments: neural amplification module, subject threshold, aggression vector calibration. I recorded everything on my wrist camera. Then a door inside the lab opened, and for the first time, I saw him. Dr. Viktor Arsenyev. He was taller than I expected, his hair silvered but neat, his movements slow and deliberate. He spoke in a calm tone to one of the scientists, though the walls muffled the words. When he turned toward the tank, the light revealed his face, serene, almost gentle. But his eyes, they were devoid of empathy, perfectly still. He pressed a button on the control panel. The figure inside the tank began to convulse violently. Bubbles erupted through the fluid as the body thrashed against its restraints. Arsenyev didn't flinch. He simply observed, making notes while the monitors spiked red. The screaming started a moment later, muffled by water and glass, but unmistakably human. Elena grabbed my arm. "We need to go, now." I couldn't move. My mind was frozen between logic and disbelief. Every ethical code, every human boundary I'd ever believed in, shattered in that moment. When the body went still, Arsenyev leaned close to the glass and whispered something, just 2 words. I couldn't hear them, but his expression chilled me to the core. Then, as if sensing he was being watched, he turned his head toward our vent. For a heartbeat, our eyes met through the metal grate, and I knew he'd seen me. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. His gaze held me there like a wire pulled tight. Then Arsenyev lifted a hand, pressed something on the console, and the corridor lights cut out one by one, each bulb snapping into darkness until only the faint red of an emergency beacon pulsed inside the lab. "Elena," I hissed, "move!" We scrambled back down the tunnel, our footsteps splashing through shallow water. Behind us, a mechanical hiss rose as vents opened, releasing the low, guttural hum into a shrill electric whine. Then came the sound of locks disengaging, metal on metal. "They know we're here," she whispered. We ran. The flashlight's beam bounced wildly off the damp walls, illuminating brief flashes of carved stone, old religious inscriptions half buried under layers of industrial piping. My pulse thudded in my ears, drowning out everything else. Halfway through the tunnel, something heavy slammed into the grate behind us. The impact rang like a hammer strike. A distorted moan followed, inhuman and wet, echoing down the corridor. I turned just long enough to see a figure thrashing against the metal, its face pressed to the bars, skin pale and blistered, eyes glowing faintly under the emergency light. Elena grabbed my wrist and yanked me forward. "Don't look, just keep going." We burst out through the cut fence moments later and collapsed in the forest. The night air felt painfully cold against my lungs. I looked back toward the monastery. The entire complex pulsed with crimson light now. Alarms wailing faintly through the fog. Shadows moved along the walls, too many to count. "They'll sweep the woods," Elena said between breaths. "We have maybe 15 minutes before they block the roads." We need to call Donovan. I pulled out my encrypted communicator, hands shaking as I keyed the distress code. No signal. The display flickered, lines of static replacing the satellite icon. Elena stared at it. They're jamming everything within 10 miles. I clenched my jaw. Then we get out of range. We moved through the forest for hours, the fog swallowing the moonlight until we could barely see 5 feet ahead. Every snapped twig made my muscles tense. Somewhere behind us, dogs barked, closer each time. At dawn, we reached a narrow ravine. The sound of water rushing below offered cover from pursuit. We descended through tangled roots and slick rock until we found a cave entrance half hidden behind a curtain of ivy. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Inside, we huddled near the wall, catching our breath. The air smelled of moss and wet stone. I took out the recording device from my wristband and replayed the footage from the tunnel. The screen flickered, showing fragments. The tank, the convulsing subject, Arsenyev's calm face, as he whispered to the glass. Then the feed glitched. For a split second, the camera caught something behind him. Another tank, larger, shape obscured. Something inside moved. A hand, maybe, or something pretending to be one. Elena watched in silence. "That's not just a virus," she said finally. "That's behavioral engineering on a biological scale." Meaning? Meaning he's rewriting what it means to be human. The words hung between us. I felt the weight of them like lead. Hours passed before I tried the communicator again. Still nothing. Either the division had gone dark or Arsenyev's signal blackout stretched farther than we thought. "Elena," I said quietly, "you were right. This operation, the division knew more than they told me." She gave a small, bitter smile. "They always do." "What if they never meant for us to stop him?" "Then we have to stop him for ourselves." Outside, the dogs had stopped barking. That should have been comforting, but the silence that followed felt worse. Just before dusk, as we prepared to move again, a strange sound drifted through the ravine. At first, I thought it was the wind, but it carried rhythm, faint, whispering syllables repeating. I stepped outside the cave, scanning the tree line. There was nothing there. Then, out of the mist, came a figure, a man in a torn lab coat stumbling forward with uneven steps. His skin was grayish, his eyes unfocused, but what stopped me cold was the mark on his wrist, a black triangle fractured down the middle, the same insignia that had been stamped on my division file. He stopped a few feet away and tilted his head as though studying me. When he opened his mouth, the words came out fractured as if 2 voices were speaking at once. "Ethan. Ward." Elena stepped beside me, weapon raised. "How does he know your name?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The man, or whatever he was, took another step forward. His pupils dilated and his voice shifted into something almost pleading. "He's coming. He wants you back." Then his body convulsed violently. He dropped to his knees, gasping as dark veins spread under his skin like ink in water. Before I could reach him, he jerked once and went still. Elena crouched beside the body, her hands trembling as she examined the mark on his wrist. "He was one of yours," she said softly. "One of the divisions." I stared at the corpse. The possibility clawed at the back of my mind. If he was division, then how— "He's proof," she cut in. "Proof that the division isn't just tracking this. They're testing it." For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, far above the trees, a low mechanical hum began to rise. Steady, deliberate, approaching. We both looked up. A drone, sleek and black, hovered through the mist. Its camera lens glowed red as it focused on us. Elena swore under her breath. "They found us." The drone emitted a short series of clicks. Then it exploded. The blast threw us backward into the cave. the shockwave rolling through the ravine. Rocks rained from the ceiling, dust choking the air. When I came to, Elena was shaking my shoulder, blood streaking her temple. "We can't stay," she gasped. "They'll send more." As we scrambled out through the smoke, I glanced once more at the ruined body near the cave mouth. The mark on his wrist was still visible through the ash, glowing faintly as if reacting to the heat. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. The division wasn't hunting me because I'd gone off mission. They were hunting me because I'd seen too much. We ran into the darkness, the hum of distant engines chasing us through the fog. Somewhere behind us, the monastery lights flared one last time, bright enough to turn the night sky red. Whatever Arsenyev had awakened inside those walls was alive now, and somehow, some part of the division wanted it that way. We didn't stop running until dawn broke over the eastern ridge. By then, the forest had thinned into rolling meadows glazed with frost, and every muscle in my body screamed for rest. The air smelled faintly of diesel and pine, civilization somewhere close, but not close enough to feel safe. Elena stumbled beside me, blood dried along her cheek. She hadn't said a word since the explosion. I could tell she was replaying it the same way I was. The drone, the mark on that dead agent's wrist. The implication that the division had been here long before we arrived. We reached a rural road just as the first truck of the morning passed, a local produce carrier heading west toward Košice. I flagged it down, flashing the forged journalist badge from my cover. The driver, half asleep, barely glanced at it before letting us climb into the back among crates of apples and burlap sacks. Inside the rattling compartment, I finally broke the silence. "They know we survived." Elena nodded without looking at me. "Which means we don't have long before they decide survival was a mistake." I checked my communicator again. Dead. No signal. The display showed the same corrupted pattern from the night before, fragments of the division emblem looping endlessly. "Do you think Donovan sent that drone?" I asked. She gave a hollow laugh. "In this line of work, we don't believe in coincidences. He either wanted to erase us or test what happens when Arsenyev's contamination spreads." Her tone was sharp, but beneath it was fear, the kind that comes from realizing your own agency might treat you as expendable data. By mid-morning, the truck reached a small Slovak town called Michalovce. We slipped out before the driver noticed, disappearing into the narrow streets, lined with faded Soviet-era buildings. The town felt ghostly in daylight, shuttered shops, stray dogs, the smell of burning coal hanging in the air. Elena led me to a safe house she'd used years earlier during an undercover op. From the outside, it looked abandoned, windows boarded, ivy crawling up the stone. Inside, it was Spartan but functional. A shortwave radio, maps of Eastern Europe pinned to the wall, and a stash of canned food in a crate marked tools. She locked the door behind us and finally exhaled. "We need to clean up, rest, and figure out our next move. Arsenyev's still alive, and the division either can't or won't stop him. That leaves us." I washed my face at the rust-stained sink, watching muddy water swirl down the drain. "We don't even know where he went after the monastery. He could be halfway across Europe by now." Elena unfolded a map and stabbed a finger at a red-circled area in southern Poland. "Not if his logistics are as heavy as we saw. He'll need infrastructure, power, isolation, access to transport. There's an abandoned mining facility near Zakopane that fits the pattern. It was shut down after a mercury spill in the 80s. Locals say the groundwater's still poisoned. No one goes there." "Perfect place for a bioweapons lab," I murmured. She nodded. "And there's something else." 2 days before we entered the village, I intercepted chatter from a private contractor group operating out of Warsaw, codename Helix Point. They were moving bioequipment south. Guess where their route ended? Zakopane, I said. Elena smiled grimly. Exactly. We spent the rest of the day repairing our gear and monitoring radio traffic. Static filled the frequencies. Whenever we tuned near division channels, interference spiked as though someone was deliberately masking signals. By nightfall, exhaustion caught up to us. I lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the image of that tank, of the body convulsing under Arsenyev's gaze. I thought of Donovan's calm warning before I left Langley. You're representing humanity itself. What if humanity was the experiment? Sleep came in bursts, fractured by dreams of whispering voices and flashing red lights. I woke before dawn to the faint crackle of the radio. Elena was at the table, headphones on, scribbling notes. Anything? I asked. She didn't look up. Maybe. A transmission in Russian, fragmented. Mentions Phase 3 deployment and field calibration subjects. Coordinates place it near Krakow. That's close to Zakopane. Too close to ignore. She tore the page from her notebook and handed it to me. If we move fast, we can reach it by tomorrow night. I studied her face, tired, determined. You realize if we find him again, there's no guarantee we make it out this time. She met my eyes. There never was. We left the safe house before sunrise, stealing an old Land Rover from a derelict garage at the edge of town. The engine coughed to life after a few desperate tries. I drove while Elena navigated using a paper atlas, the kind no satellite could track. The farther north we went, the colder it got. Fields gave way to dense pine forests and mist-shrouded hills. Every so often, we passed checkpoints manned by uniformed men with no insignia. They didn't stop anyone, but they watched every car that passed. By late afternoon, a gray drizzle had turned to sleet. We crossed into Poland under fake Czech passports. No one asked questions. That alone told me the route was compromised. Someone wanted us to get through. Night settled quickly. The headlights carved narrow tunnels through the fog as the road wound upward into the Tatra Mountains. Elena's fingers tapped nervously on the dashboard. You feel that? She said suddenly. I slowed the car. Feel what? She pointed toward the tree line. The forest was perfectly still, yet I could sense it too. A faint tremor running through the ground, rhythmic and mechanical, like the echo of distant machinery. Power generators, I guessed. Maybe, she said. Or maybe the earth's starting to remember what they did to it. Her words sent a chill deeper than the cold outside. We drove another hour before reaching a decaying mining town nestled in a valley. The sign read, Kościelisko, letters rusted and half-fallen. Most of the buildings were deserted, windows shattered, snow piled against the doors. At the far end of the main street stood a boarded-up church whose bell tower leaned slightly to one side. We parked behind it, engine off. The silence was absolute. This close to the mountains we should be invisible, I said. Elena checked her weapon and adjusted her coat. Invisible doesn't mean safe. She was right. It never did. The snow fell harder as we moved through the ghost town of Kościelisko. It wasn't a gentle snowfall, but the heavy, suffocating kind that buried sound and light together. Every step we took crunched under layers of frost, each breath a cloud that vanished instantly into the dark. The mine entrance wasn't hard to find. It loomed behind a collapsed factory, sealed by a rusted gate marked with faded hazard symbols. A warning in Polish was barely legible on the sign. Mercury contamination, restricted access. Elena tested the gate. It groaned but gave way with a single kick. Inside, a tunnel yawned into the mountain, black as the void itself. Looks abandoned, I said. That's what they want it to look like, she replied, switching on her flashlight. The beam sliced through the darkness, revealing old rail tracks, broken helmets, and rusted machinery. We moved slowly, our footsteps echoing off the damp stone. The deeper we went, the colder it became, until even our breaths turned to mist that hung like ghosts in the beam of light. After maybe 15 minutes of descent, I noticed the air shift. There was a faint hum again, low, steady, almost inaudible, but unmistakably mechanical. Elena stopped. "Do you hear that?" "Same sound as before," I whispered. "The monastery. Means we're close." The tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber lined with scaffolding and steel walkways. At first glance, it seemed empty. Then my flashlight caught something carved into the far wall, a symbol, the same fractured triangle that marked the files back in Langley. Only this one was fresh, cut deep into the rock, edges smooth and deliberate. Elena touched it with her gloved hand. "This isn't old. Someone's been here recently." I was about to reply when something metallic clicked behind us. We both spun. A faint light flickered deeper in the tunnel, a single bulb swinging from a wire. Beneath it stood a metal table littered with glass vials and scattered papers. I approached cautiously. The vials were empty but still glistened with residue. Whatever they'd contained, it smelled chemical and faintly sweet, like burnt plastic mixed with ozone. On the papers were handwritten notes in Russian. I could only make out fragments. Phase calibration, subject reactivity, memory dissolution. Elena's flashlight froze on a series of photos pinned above the table. They were surveillance images, faces of villagers, some I recognized from the Carpathian town. Their eyes were dilated, expressions blank, as if they'd been caught mid-hypnosis. Then we saw the last photo in the row. It was me. Not from the monastery, not even from Europe. The photo showed me leaving my apartment in Arlington, 2 weeks before Donovan recruited me. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "They were watching you before you joined the division." I felt the blood drain from my face. No, that's impossible. But I knew it wasn't. Behind us, somewhere deeper in the mine, the hum grew louder. It wasn't steady anymore. It pulsed like a heartbeat. A faint vibration rippled through the floor. We raised our flashlights toward the sound. Something was moving in the shadows. At first, it looked like a person, tall, human-shaped, but its movements were wrong, too fluid, its limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. The light caught its face for a fraction of a second, and I wished it hadn't. The features were distorted, skin stretched tight like translucent wax, eyes black and wide, veins glowing faintly beneath the surface. It opened its mouth, and a sound came out that wasn't a scream, but the memory of one, like an echo left over from pain. "Run!" Elena hissed. We turned and sprinted back toward the main tunnel. The thing followed, its footsteps slapping wetly against the stone, faster than any human could move. I fired 2 rounds over my shoulder. The bullets sparked against the wall. The creature recoiled briefly, shrieking in a pitch that made my eardrums ring. Then it lunged again, closing the distance. Ahead, a narrow service shaft branched off to the left. Elena dove through first, sliding across the gravel. I followed, barely clearing the corner as the thing's hand clawed at my coat. The fabric tore, and a thin line of blood burned across my back where its nails grazed me. We kept running until the hum faded behind us, replaced by the sound of our ragged breathing. When we finally stopped, we were in another chamber, smaller, lined with crates and industrial containers. Elena leaned against the wall, gasping. "That thing, it was one of them." "One of what?" "Test subjects, but this one's stabilized enough to move outside containment." I wiped blood from my neck, staring at the dark tunnel behind us. "He's testing the virus here, isn't he?" She nodded grimly. "Worse, he's perfecting it." We searched the crates. Most were empty, but one had a faded label in English, property of the Central Intelligence Agency. Inside were sealed vials of a bluish serum, each marked with identical serial numbers. I picked one up, turning it in the light. So it's true. The division's fingerprints are all over this. Elena looked at me. Now do you see why they wanted you here, Ethan? Not to stop him, to retrieve their investment. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Everything fit too neatly. Donovan's evasive briefings, the drone strike, the silence after our last transmission. It was all control, every move anticipated. Before I could speak, my earpiece, dead since the monastery, crackled with static. Then a voice, faint but unmistakable. Agent Ward, if you can hear this, do not proceed further. You are entering restricted territory. Donovan. Sir, I whispered. What the hell is going on? You knew about this site. Stop talking, the voice interrupted. You were not authorized to continue. Extraction will not be provided. Elena stared at me. They're cutting you off. Donovan, listen. Arsenyev's alive. The virus is spreading. We can end this. Static swallowed the signal. Then, in a tone colder than anything I'd heard before, Donovan's voice returned. Ethan, you're already compromised. The transmission ended. The chamber lights flickered once. Then, in the shadows beyond the crates, something began to move again. Elena raised her weapon. We're not alone. I tightened my grip on the vial. The hum rose once more, shaking the walls like the heartbeat of a machine waking from sleep. Somewhere deep inside the mine, a siren started to wail. And in that moment, I realized the mine wasn't abandoned at all. It was alive. Every pipe, every wire, every echo pulsing with Arsenyev's new creation. The wailing siren swallowed every other sound. It wasn't a mechanical alarm anymore. It had a resonance that made my skin crawl, and as though it was coming from inside the walls themselves. The air trembled with each pulse, dust raining down from the beams above. Elena motioned for me to follow. We moved fast through the narrow corridor, weaving between crates and machinery that hummed faintly, alive with residual energy. I caught sight of conduits running along the walls, improvised, recent. Arsenyev had wired the old mine into something far more complex, something that wasn't meant to sustain human life. A blast door stood at the end of the tunnel. Beside it was a biometric panel glowing red. Elena knelt to inspect it. Retina and DNA, she muttered. Old tech, but still deadly if we guess wrong. She reached into her pack and produced a small silver capsule. Micro-splicer, harvests trace samples. I just need a match. We scanned the crates until we found another corpse, a guard slumped behind a generator, eyes wide open and filmed with frost. The insignia on his sleeve wasn't military. It was the same fractured triangle I'd seen in Langley. Elena grimaced. Division Field Unit. I looked closer. His wrist bore the same glowing mark as the body in the cave, the same mutation, the same infection. Whatever Arsenyev had built, it could infect through blood, maybe through air. Elena extracted a drop of his dried blood with the splicer and pressed it to the scanner. The panel flickered, then turned green with a mechanical click. "After you," she whispered. The door slid open, releasing a rush of cold air that smelled faintly of antiseptic and decay. The corridor beyond was lit with flickering fluorescent strips. A line of observation windows ran along the right-hand wall, each revealing a chamber filled with glass tanks, computers, and surgical rigs. Some tanks were empty, others weren't. I forced myself to look. Bodies floated inside, suspended in translucent fluid. Electrodes ran from their skulls to consoles humming with data streams. One subject, a man, had his mouth open in a silent scream, eyes darting back and forth as though trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. On the glass was a label, Phase 4, Cognitive Conversion. Elena whispered, "He's rewriting them." I frowned. Into what? Into instruments. She swallowed hard. You erase fear, empathy, individuality. You get perfect obedience. He's building soldiers who never question. As we moved deeper, The hum thickened into a throbbing vibration that I could feel in my teeth. My thoughts began to fuzz at the edges. Words echoed faintly in my mind, not quite voices, more like impressions. Let go. You don't need the burden. It's easier if you stop resisting. I shook my head hard, trying to clear it. Do you hear that? Elena gave me a sharp look. Hear what? I didn't answer. The whispering wasn't in the air. It was inside me, like a thought that wasn't mine. We reached a central chamber where the tunnels converged. The ceiling rose high above, lost in shadow. Banks of servers lined the walls, their lights blinking like constellations. In the center stood a cylindrical pod, connected to the network by thick cables. Inside the pod was a faint silhouette, motionless. I approached carefully. The display beside it listed data in both English and Cyrillic. Neural pattern A01, primary donor. The biometric graph showed faint activity, heart rate, oxygen levels. Elena's voice was barely audible. That's a person in there. I wiped the frost from the glass. A woman's face stared back, peaceful, asleep. But something about her features struck me. I'd seen her before. Elena, I whispered, it's the same woman from the village, the one they dragged into the lab that night. Her lips parted slightly, a faint exhale fogging the glass. For a second, I thought she was dead. Then her eyes opened. They were pure white. She looked straight at me, and I felt the whisper again, stronger this time, louder, clearer. You shouldn't have come here, Ethan. I stumbled backward. She knows my name. Elena's hand went to her pistol. That's not possible. But the voice didn't stop. It wasn't coming through my ears anymore. It was threading directly into my thoughts. He's waiting for you. Then the hum cut out. The entire facility fell silent. A door at the far end of the chamber opened with a hiss, and a single figure stepped through. Dr. Viktor Arsenyev. He looked different now, gaunt, his skin pale from years underground, but his eyes burned with the same cold intelligence. He carried no weapon, only a small data tablet in his hand. I was wondering when they'd send one of Donovan's loyal ghosts, he said in perfect English. Tell me, Agent Ward, do you still believe in the mission? My pulse quickened. You murdered civilians. You turned them into test subjects. He smiled faintly. I gave them transcendence. The virus isn't a weapon, it's liberation. Imagine a species without fear, without conflict, without the illusions of morality that divide us. Without humanity, I spat. Arsenyev stepped closer, his gaze unnervingly calm. Humanity is a failed experiment. Your government knew that when they funded me. The division didn't want peace, Ethan. They wanted control. I simply gave them what they asked for. He gestured toward the pod behind me. She's the prototype, neural link between the organic and synthetic, the beginning of a new evolution. But something went wrong. What do you mean? She still dreams. His tone softened, almost mournful. A fragment of consciousness that refuses to yield. I can't erase it. That's why I need you. Elena raised her weapon. You're insane. He ignored her. You've been exposed to the early strain, Agent Ward. You feel it, don't you? The voices, the clarity between thoughts. You're already part of it. The division chose you because you were compatible. A chill swept through me. The headaches, the whispers, the unnatural speed of my recovery after the cave explosion. It all made sense now. I forced the words out. You infected me. He tilted his head. Not infected, enlightened. Elena fired. The shot hit the wall behind him. He'd moved faster than I thought possible, retreating into the shadows. The overhead lights burst into static flicker, plunging the chamber into a strobe of black and white. Through the chaos, Arsenyev's voice echoed from every speaker. You can't kill me, Agent Ward. I'm already in your head. The hum roared back to life. The pod shattered. The woman inside fell forward, limp, but before she hit the ground, her eyes opened again, glowing white in the dark. She spoke in Arsenyev's voice. Welcome to Phase 5. The chamber convulsed with noise. The air pressure shifted violently as every monitor exploded into shards of glass. Sparks rained down like fireflies. The woman who had fallen from the pod rose to her feet, her movements eerily precise, graceful but wrong, as though gravity obeyed her differently. Elena fired again. The bullet hit center mass but didn't stop her. The woman barely flinched. Instead, she tilted her head in that same uncanny, puppet-like way. I could feel something in my skull, a vibration that wasn't sound, but thought. Do you see it now, Ethan? The voice wasn't Arsenyev's anymore. It was a fusion, his intellect laced with her toneless calm. My vision blurred. I grabbed my temples, trying to shut the voice out. Get out of my head! Elena grabbed my shoulder, shouting something. But her words were swallowed by the sirens and the inhuman hum reverberating through the chamber. The woman took a step forward. The light around her began to distort, bending slightly as though reality itself resisted her presence. The liquid from the shattered pod pooled around her feet, steaming faintly. She opened her mouth, and the hum deepened to a bone-shaking frequency that made the steel railings groan. Elena emptied her magazine. The shots tore through the woman's chest, but instead of blood, a black fluid seeped out, thick as tar. It hissed as it hit the floor, eating through metal like acid. "Ethan, move!" Elena screamed. I snapped out of the trance just as the floor panels began to melt under that black substance. We sprinted toward the exit, stumbling as the vibration built to a near-deafening crescendo. Behind us, the creature, the hybrid, followed, walking through the flames like a shadow on fire. We crashed through a maintenance hatch into a narrow service tunnel. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes, turning the air into a scalding fog. Elena pulled me forward by the arm, coughing. "She's not human anymore," she rasped. "He merged with her. He's inside every cell." A voice echoed faintly behind us. "Don't run, Ethan. You'll only delay the inevitable." The tunnel split ahead into two branches. Elena pointed left. "That leads to the shaft." We stumbled through, emerging into a cavern where the ceiling disappeared into darkness. The old mine elevator stood at the center, a rusted cage attached to cables that vanished upward into the abyss. Elena sprinted to the control panel, slamming switches until the motor sputtered to life. The platform jerked violently, beginning its slow ascent. Below, the tunnel glowed red. The hybrid was coming. "Faster!" I shouted. "This is all it's got." I looked down just in time to see her face appear in the red glow. No expression, no emotion, just calm inevitability. Her eyes burned white. She reached toward the cables, and they began to blacken, the metal corroding instantly wherever her hand passed. Elena grabbed the emergency brake lever. "Hold on." She pulled it hard, and the elevator lurched upward with a mechanical scream. My stomach dropped as we shot toward the upper shaft, sparks raining from the rails. Then silence. The cables snapped. The elevator plunged. For a split second, weightlessness, and then impact. The world shattered into sound and pain. When I opened my eyes, the chamber was tilted sideways. Smoke poured in from cracks above. My ribs felt like they'd been shattered. Elena lay a few feet away, half buried under twisted metal, her face streaked with blood but still breathing. "Elena," I croaked, crawling to her. "Stay with me." She groaned faintly. "We're not dying here." I tried to help her up, but the air changed again. Colder now, heavy with static. From the darkness beyond the wreckage, the white glow returned. She was standing there, unhurt, unburned, perfect. The hybrid's gaze fixed on me, and for a moment I saw something flicker behind those eyes. A memory, maybe. a ghost of the woman she used to be. "Please," I whispered, "you don't have to do this." Her expression twitched. The hum faltered slightly. "He's still in here," she said, two voices overlapping inside my head. "I can't stop him." Elena coughed blood. "Forcing herself upright, then fight him. You're stronger than he is." The hybrid's head tilted again, almost curious. For a heartbeat, I thought we'd reached her. Then she screamed. The sound wasn't human. It tore through the mine like thunder. Lights burst and the servers above began to detonate in sequence. The floor shook as if the mountain itself were rejecting what lived inside it. "Elena, we have to go," I yelled. We ran, stumbling through collapsing tunnels, dodging falling steel. The hybrid screams echoed behind us, sometimes close, sometimes impossibly far away. The entire facility was coming apart, energy surging through the cables like veins filled with fire. At last, we burst through a rusted maintenance hatch and into the freezing night. Snow whipped across the mountainside, turning red in the glow of the explosion below. The mine imploded in on itself, a plume of black smoke rising like a dying breath into the sky. We collapsed in the snow, choking, shaking, alive. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The night was eerily still again. No sirens, no hum, just the whisper of wind through pine trees. Finally, Elena broke the silence. "Do you think she's gone?" I stared at the burning crater below. "I don't think things like that ever die." She looked at me, exhaustion and fear etched deep into her face. "You're infected, aren't you?" I didn't answer. The whispers had quieted, but they hadn't left. They were still there, faint, patient, waiting. After what felt like hours, we made it to a road where a single car's headlights cut through the storm. It slowed as it approached. A man stepped out, dressed in civilian clothes, face hidden under a hood. "Elena Kovich, Ethan Ward," he said calmly. "Director Donovan sends his regards." Elena raised her pistol instantly. "Stay back." The man smiled faintly. "Relax, I'm not here to kill you. The director wants you extracted. Debriefing in Zurich, 0600 hours. You'll both receive medical evaluation and new assignments." I stepped forward, heart pounding. "You think we're just going to walk back into the division after this?" He shrugged. "You don't really have a choice. You've seen too much." Behind him, a black SUV idled quietly, exhaust mingling with the snow. I glanced at Elena. Her expression was unreadable, but her hand tightened on her weapon. The operative tilted his head. "Don't make this difficult. You're valuable assets, especially you, Agent Ward." Something in his tone set my teeth on edge. The whisper in my mind stirred again. Louder this time. "Don't trust them." "Elena," I said quietly, "get in the car." She hesitated, then followed my lead. The operative smiled as we climbed inside, taking the front seat beside the driver. The doors locked automatically. The vehicle rolled away from the mountains, leaving the burning ruins behind. As the glow disappeared in the rearview mirror, the whisper in my head spoke one last time, soft and certain. "He's not finished, Ethan." And as I looked out into the darkness beyond the snow, I saw a faint red light pulsing far in the distance, steady, rhythmic. The hum had followed us. The road to Zurich was silent except for the hiss of snow against the windshield. The SUV cut through the night like a bullet, sleek, black, government-grade, the kind that never appeared on rental records. Elena sat beside me, her hands cuffed to her lap. Across from us, the operative kept his pistol trained loosely on the floor, not pointed but ready. He hadn't said a word since we left the mountains. The driver spoke once, in an accent I couldn't place. "We'll arrive at the facility in 3 hours. You'll both be processed, cleared, and debriefed." I glanced at Elena. Her jaw was set tight, eyes fixed on the snow whipping past the window. "Processed," she murmured. "That's their word for containment." The operative smirked slightly, catching the remark. You've seen what's out there, Ms. Kovich. Do you really think they'll just let you go home? She leaned forward. What do you think we saw? He didn't answer. I watched him carefully. There was something off about the way he moved. Too deliberate, too controlled. When the headlights flashed across his face, I saw a faint discoloration running from his temple down his neck, like branching veins, dark beneath the skin. I leaned closer. How long ago were you exposed? His eyes flicked toward me, sharp as a blade. I don't know what you mean. But I could see it. The subtle twitch in his jaw, the way he blinked a half-second too late. The infection wasn't just contained to the labs anymore. It had spread through the division's ranks. The SUV veered off the main road and onto a snow-covered mountain route. The GPS on the dashboard showed no data, just a blinking red dot where the road should have been. We descended into a tunnel carved into the base of a glacier. The temperature dropped instantly, frost creeping across the glass. Ahead, lights glimmered, an underground checkpoint flanked by armored guards in unmarked black uniforms. As the car rolled to a stop, the driver lowered his window and passed an ID card through the scanner. A mechanical voice responded, "Access granted, Zurich Black Veil site." Elena shot me a look. Black Veil? I remembered hearing the code name whispered in Langley's lower corridors years ago. A rumored directive buried so deep that even the Senate oversight committees didn't know it existed. The myth said Black Veil wasn't about intelligence gathering or counterterrorism. It was about containment of anomalies. The gate lifted. We drove into a vast subterranean hangar lined with aircraft, armored vehicles, and glass-enclosed laboratories. Everything was spotless, sterilized. The kind of cold perfection that only existed in facilities where morality had long since been bleached out. When the SUV stopped, 2 guards approached. The operative stepped out first, weapons still drawn. "Agents Ward and Kovich for debriefing," he said, "under Director Donovan's directive." The guards exchanged a quick glance before nodding. One of them gestured for us to exit. As soon as we stepped out, the cuffs were replaced with heavier restraints. Not just metal, but smart cuffs that tightened with every movement. We were escorted down a corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly. Glass walls revealed rooms filled with scientists in hazmat suits, working around sealed containment pods. The pods pulsed faintly with blue light, as though something alive was inside. One of the guards opened a biometric door at the end of the hall. In here. We stepped into a white room with 2 chairs, a table, and a wall-sized mirror. A familiar voice echoed from a speaker above us. "Ethan Ward, Elena Kovich, sit down." Donovan. The mirror flickered to life, revealing his face on the screen. Older, more gaunt than when I'd last seen him, but still carrying that unnerving calm. "Welcome back," he said evenly. "You've made quite a mess." I glared at the screen. "You left us out there to die." Donovan didn't flinch. "You weren't meant to die. You were meant to confirm whether Arsenyev's project had reached operational phase. You succeeded." Elena slammed her hands on the table. "Operational phase. That thing nearly destroyed half the mountain." Donovan's tone didn't change. "And yet, you survived, which means our models were correct." I leaned forward. "Models? What are you testing, Donovan?" He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "You've been exposed to the early-stage neurovirus. Your survival makes you unique. The infection should have killed you within hours, but instead, it integrated into your neural network." My stomach turned cold. "You're saying I'm infected?" "Not infected," he corrected. "Adapted. You and Ms. Kovich are proof that controlled exposure creates compatibility. Arsenyev was right. Fear is a chemical imbalance. Remove it and the subject becomes efficient. Unstoppable." Elena stared in disbelief. "You're continuing his work." Donovan leaned closer to the camera. "No, Ms. Kovach, we're perfecting it." Arsenyev lacked discipline. His methods were messy. Ours are cleaner. I felt something stir at the back of my mind. That same whisper from the mind, faint but present. "He's lying." "Where is Arsenyev?" I demanded. Donovan's lips curved into a faint smile. "Closer than you think." The door behind us hissed open. Two figures in lab coats entered, pushing a cart with a black containment cylinder. The walls of the cylinder were frosted from within, light pulsing softly through cracks in the ice. "What's that?" Elena asked. Donovan's image flickered, then stabilized. Phase 6. One of the scientists pressed a control pad. The frost cleared, revealing a human silhouette inside the cylinder, male, restrained by cables and biogel tubing. His eyes were closed, but I knew that face instantly. Arsenyev. Donovan's voice was calm. "We recovered him from the Zakopane site, barely alive, but conscious. His intellect remains intact. He's been cooperative, to a degree." I took a step closer, the cuffs biting into my wrists. "You're experimenting on him." "We're merging his research with yours," Donovan replied. "You're part of the same system now. The Black Veil Directive requires the synchronization of donor and carrier. You two are the final stage." Elena shook her head. "You can't control this. You saw what it did to him." "Control isn't the goal," Donovan said softly. "Evolution is." The lights dimmed slightly as a low hum filled the room. I looked back at the cylinder just in time to see Arsenyev's eyes snap open, white, glowing faintly under the glass. The scientists froze. One of them whispered, "Sir, containment breach in neural field 3. The glass cracked, then shattered. The sound of the glass breaking wasn't an explosion. It was sharper, more surgical, like the world itself being cut open. The cylinder ruptured in a single violent exhale of cold mist. Every light in the room flickered and dimmed. Arsenyev stepped forward through the vapor, bare feet touching the tile with deliberate slowness. Tubes snapped off his body like brittle vines. His eyes glowed white in the darkness, not from light, but from something beneath the surface, something alive. The two scientists stood frozen, paralyzed between awe and terror. The first managed to take a step back. "Sir, we need containment." Arsenyev raised a hand. The man's body convulsed violently. For an instant, it looked as if invisible wires were pulling him apart. Then, with a sickening crunch, he collapsed, lifeless, blood seeping from his ears and nose. The other scientist screamed and ran for the door. She didn't make it. The hum intensified and she froze mid-motion, eyes rolling back as though something had switched her off from the inside. The security lights bathed the room in crimson. Donovan's voice shouted from the intercom, calm but urgent. "Level 1 lockdown, all corridors sealed. Neutralize Arsenyev at any cost." Elena yanked at her restraints. "Get these damn things off!" I twisted against mine, and to my shock, the cuffs loosened. The locks disengaged by themselves with a faint metallic click. Elena stared at me. "How?" "I don't know. But I did. Somewhere deep inside, the infection was responding, recognizing a command signal. The whisper returned, clear and urgent this time. "He's not your enemy, Ethan. He's your mirror." Arsenyev turned toward us. His expression wasn't rage, it was curiosity. "So," he said softly, his voice layered, human and something else beneath it. "They sent you to finish what I began." I took a step forward. "Donovan sent me to stop you." He tilted his head slightly. "Stop me? You can't stop what's already inside you. You've felt it, haven't you? The hum in your veins, the way the world slows when you focus. You're becoming what you were designed to be." Elena raised her pistol, hands trembling. "Stay back." Arsenyev looked at her and her gun hand froze mid-air. Her body trembled violently, like she was fighting her own nervous system. "Stop it!" I shouted. He looked back at me, Arsene, and smiled faintly. "Then make me." Something inside me shifted, like a pressure valve releasing. I didn't think, I reacted. The air between us rippled, and suddenly the hum reversed direction. Flowing out of me, Arsenyev staggered just slightly, his eyes widening. "Interesting," he murmured. "You've learned to resist the signal." I didn't understand what I'd done, only that it had worked. I grabbed Elena's arm and pulled her towards the door. The lockdown had sealed the main exit, but one of the observation windows had cracked from the blast. I smashed it open with the chair, and we climbed through into the adjoining lab. Sirens wailed through the corridors, mixed with gunfire and screams. "What the hell was that?" Elena gasped as we ran. "I don't know, but I think he can control nervous systems, and whatever he did to me, it made me immune." We turned down a hallway lined with containment cells. Inside, division personnel banged on glass walls, begging to be let out. Their eyes gleamed faintly in the dim light. Already infected, the virus moved faster now, feeding on panic, on adrenaline. We passed a mirrored observation room where a team of operatives lay dead around their consoles. The security feeds still played on the monitors, showing Arsenyev walking calmly through the facility. Wherever he went, people fell, not shot, not attacked, simply shut down. "Elevators this way," Elena shouted. We reached the lift just as the floor above exploded. Concrete dust rained down. She hit the panel frantically, but the system blinked red. Access restricted, lockdown in effect. "We'll never make it through," she said. "There's another way." I pointed to a service vent partially hidden behind a row of oxygen tanks. "It connects to the hangar." We crawled through the ductwork, the metal groaning under our weight. The temperature climbed as the emergency systems overloaded. Every few seconds, the facility lights flickered, plunging us into darkness. Halfway through the vent, the whisper returned. "You can't save her, Ethan. She's still afraid." I clenched my fists. "Get out of my head." Elena looked back. "What?" "Nothing. Keep moving." The vent opened into a catwalk overlooking the main hangar. Below us, chaos reigned. Soldiers firing blindly, alarms blaring, smoke filling the air. Arsenyev moved through it all like a phantom, untouched by bullets. Around him, infected personnel fought their uninfected comrades with impossible strength. He didn't even look at them. His focus was fixed on us. Elena whispered, "He's coming." "Then we move now." We dropped from the catwalk onto a stack of supply crates. My knees nearly gave out from the impact, but adrenaline kept me moving. Across the hangar, I spotted a row of aircraft. Unmarked Division VTOLs, one of which still had engines running. "That one!" I shouted. We sprinted across the floor, dodging gunfire and debris. I felt the hum rise again. Stronger now, heavier. The infected soldiers began turning their heads toward me one by one, like a chorus responding to an unseen signal. They stopped fighting each other and started moving toward us. "Elena, go!" She vaulted into the cockpit while I covered her, firing at anything that moved. The bullets barely slowed them down. One lunged at me, grabbing my arm, and I saw his eyes, black veins crawling across the whites. Mouth twitching in silent spasms. I shoved him off, but his hand left a smear of blood on my jacket. My skin tingled where it touched. Elena shouted from the cockpit, "Engines primed, get in!" I dove inside and slammed the hatch shut, just as a dozen infected slammed against the hull. She pulled the throttle, and the VTOL roared upward, shaking violently as we cleared the hangar roof. Below, the Zurich facility collapsed in on itself, explosions blooming in sequence like falling stars. Through the smoke, I saw him, Arsenyev, standing in the middle of the burning wreckage, looking straight up at us. Even from a mile above, I could still hear his voice in my mind. "You can't run from evolution, Ethan. You are the next phase." I gripped the armrest until my knuckles turned white. Elena didn't look at me when she spoke. "Tell me I'm not hearing him too." I stared at the horizon. "You are." The whisper hadn't left. It was inside both of us now, and as the fires of Zurich burned behind us, I realized something far worse than infection. Arsenyev wasn't trying to escape. He was spreading. The night swallowed Zurich behind us. The VTOL cut through the alpine sky, engines howling against the wind. Down below, the Swiss mountains sprawled endlessly, peaks glimmering faintly under the moonlight. Elena kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, her hands trembling slightly on the controls. Her face was pale from exhaustion, streaked with soot. I sat beside her, still clutching the pistol I'd taken from the hangar floor, though I wasn't sure anymore what good bullets would do against something like Arsenyev. The hum was quieter now, distant, like a song playing underwater, but it never left. It vibrated faintly in my chest, syncing with my pulse. Every so often I caught fragments of words, unformed, whispering thoughts not entirely my own. "Do you feel it too, Ethan? The network's awake." I rubbed my temples and forced the voice back down. Elena glanced over. "He's in your head again, isn't he?" "Always." I took a slow breath. "It's like trying to hold your thoughts in a storm. He's in the system, Elena, in everything. That facility wasn't the end, it was a relay." Her grip on the throttle tightened. "Then we can't just run. We need to cut off his network before it reaches anyone else." "Where?" She hesitated before answering. "There's an off-grid comms bunker buried in the Valais Alps. Old NATO infrastructure. My contacts used it years ago for covert satellite routing. It's analog, no digital uplinks. If anything's safe, it's there." "Contacts? They're not division," she said flatly. "They're the kind of people who make division ghosts disappear." I leaned back in the seat, trying to process what that meant. "You trust them?" "I don't trust anyone, but they owe me." We flew in silence for another hour. The snowstorm worsened, slamming the hull with ice pellets that sounded like shrapnel. Somewhere between the flashes of lightning, I thought I saw movement on the mountains below, small clusters of light moving unnaturally fast across the slopes, like fireflies darting through the snow. When I looked again, they were gone. By the time we reached Valais, the storm had thickened into a whiteout. Elena landed the VTOL on a narrow ridge barely visible beneath the snow. The engines whined to a halt, leaving an almost painful silence in their wake. The bunker's entrance was buried under 6 feet of snow. We dug with our hands until the steel hatch emerged, massive, corroded but intact. The keypad beside it was dead. Elena pulled out a small power cell from her pack, jury-rigging it to the circuit. Sparks jumped. After a tense few seconds, the door released with a deep metallic groan. Inside, the air was stale and dry. Emergency lights flickered on, casting the corridor in a dim orange hue. The walls were concrete, the ceiling low. Dust drifted through the air like ash. We sealed the hatch behind us and descended deeper. The temperature rose slightly, though the oppressive silence remained. At the bottom of the stairwell was a control chamber filled with analog consoles and rotary dials. Elena ran her hands over the panels, brushing away dust. "This is it. Manual comms grid. We can send an encrypted pulse to my network. Warn them what's happening." I nodded, pacing slowly across the room. My reflection in a cracked monitor caught my attention. My eyes looked darker than before, shadows blooming in the irises, faint but unmistakable. "Elena." She turned, reading my face instantly. "How long?" "I don't know. Since the mine, maybe. The contact, the drone strike. Whatever they did, it's been growing. She walked closer, searching my expression. Do you feel it taking over? Not taking over, I said quietly. Changing me. The hum surged again, loud enough that the overhead lights trembled. I pressed my palms to my temples. Images flashed across my mind. Red corridors, burning data screens, the division emblem fracturing into static. Then I saw him, Arsenyev, standing in a darkened room surrounded by servers. His hand rested on a console, eyes closed, whispering to himself in Russian. He was smiling. I gasped, stumbling back. Elena caught me before I fell. What did you see? She demanded. He's alive. He's somewhere in Europe. I saw coordinates. Berlin, I think. He's accessing the satellite uplinks. Her expression hardened. He's spreading the neural virus through communications bandwidth. Every network that connects to the division will carry his signal. That's not just data corruption, I said. It's mental infiltration. Anyone exposed could start hearing him, thinking like him. She turned to the consoles, her hands flying over the switches. Then we cut him off here. If we can isolate the satellite relay, we can buy time before he reaches global transmission range. I joined her, connecting the analog circuit lines. The system groaned to life, relays clicking in sequence. Old green monitors flickered on, displaying fragmented data maps. As she worked, I caught movement in the corner of the room. A shadow, tall, wrong. I swung my pistol up instantly, but there was nothing there, just the echo of footsteps fading into the hall. Elena. I know, she whispered, not looking up. We're not alone. The air grew thicker, like the oxygen was being sucked out of the room. Somewhere in the bunker, a door slammed shut. The lights flickered twice, then went red. A distorted voice echoed through the intercom. Not Arsenyev's, Donovan's. Agent Ward, you were never supposed to reach this site. Elena froze. How the hell? I told you. The voice continued, calm, clinical. Black Veil isn't about containment anymore. It's activation. Zurich was a necessary loss. You've proven the signal can survive human hosts. Congratulations. I felt my stomach twist. You infected me on purpose. Not infection, Donovan corrected. Integration. You are the carrier. The virus learned empathy through you, control through Arsenyev. Together, you're the key to stabilization. Elena slammed a fist against the console. You're insane, Donovan. You think you can weaponize this? Not weaponize. Transcend. Then, softly, Ethan, you're not dying. You're evolving. Don't fight it. The speakers crackled and the hum surged through the walls again. The concrete vibrated like a heartbeat. Elena grabbed my arm. We have to get out of here now. The floor buckled beneath us as one of the consoles exploded, showering sparks. A shape emerged through the haze of smoke, half seen, human-shaped but translucent, as though made of static. It moved with jerky precision, each motion lagging behind itself like a corrupted image. Elena fired. The bullets tore through it, shredding nothing but air. The thing tilted its head and began to mimic her voice perfectly. We have to get out of here now. Her face went pale. Ethan! I aimed for the control junction, shooting out the main power feed. The lights died instantly, plunging us into blackness. The hum faded, just slightly. Elena, move! We sprinted back toward the stairwell as another explosion rocked the bunker. Concrete dust filled the air. Behind us, the mimic thing shrieked, a sound of glitching metal and static overlapping with human screams. We reached the upper hatch. Elena slammed her palm against the manual release. Nothing. It's jammed. I pressed my hand to the steel, and without understanding how, I felt it respond, vibrating faintly, then unlocking with a sharp click. Elena stared at me. How did you? I don't know. Just move. We shoved the hatch open and stumbled out into the blizzard. The bunker door slammed shut behind us with a mechanical hiss. Far below, the mountain rumbled. The hum followed us out into the storm. The snowstorm had turned feral, horizontal waves of ice whipping across the ridge. The world felt like a static field, every sound muffled, every breath painful. Behind us, the bunker's steel hatch glowed faintly, pulsing like a dying heart. Elena stumbled beside me, clutching her shoulder where debris had torn her jacket. "We can't stay out here," she shouted above the wind. "We'll freeze before sunrise." I scanned the ridge. In the distance, a narrow mountain road twisted down toward the valley, lit by the faint, flickering headlights of an abandoned truck, half buried in snow. There, we forced our way through the storm, half crawling, half falling down the slope. Every few steps, the wind carried a faint, almost human whisper. Not words, but syllables that echoed with something more than air. "Ethan, come home." I shook my head violently, trying to drown it out. But the harder I resisted, the louder it became, threading through the storm like a melody only I could hear. When we reached the truck, I yanked open the frozen door. The engine was dead, but the interior was dry. We huddled inside, shivering, catching our breath. Elena wiped frost from her face. "You're hearing him again." "Yes." She looked at me carefully, studying every flicker in my eyes. "How close are we to losing you?" "I'm still me." I hesitated. "Mostly." She exhaled slowly, then pulled a small black drive from her coat. While we were in the bunker, I pulled the backup data from the analog grid. If we can reach a live satellite uplink before Donovan locks the system, we can broadcast proof of what they've done. The virus, Black Veil, all of it. I stared at the drive, its tiny light blinking like a heartbeat. "You think exposing them will stop this?" "It's the only card we have left." We sat in silence for a moment, the wind howling against the glass. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement through the storm, distant shapes half visible in the white haze, too tall, too still to be human. "Elena," I whispered, "we're not alone." She peered through the window. Dear God. Figures were moving across the ridge, dozens of them, their outlines flickering like holograms distorted by interference. Their bodies seemed to phase in and out of existence. 1 second solid, the next translucent, like signals caught between frequencies, and they were coming straight for us. "Go!" Elena shouted. We burst from the truck, plunging back into the snow. The figures followed, moving in synchronized precision, their feet barely disturbing the surface. One of them reached the truck and touched its hood. The metal corroded instantly, eaten away by black crystalline veins. "Arsenyev's signal," I gasped. "He's using them as carriers." We scrambled up the ridge toward the tree line, my vision blurred, the world swimming between reality and static. The infection inside me pulsed with every step. Stronger now, louder. "You can stop running, Ethan. Join the current." "Elena," I stumbled, dropping to one knee. My hands were shaking violently. The snow beneath my fingers began to hiss, melting into black liquid. She grabbed me by the collar and yanked me upright. "Don't you dare give in now." "I can't hold it." She slapped me hard across the face. "You're not him. You're not a machine. You're still human." Her voice cut through the noise like a flare through fog. The hum wavered, faltered, then receded just enough for me to move again. We reached the forest edge, diving between the trees. The shapes followed slower now, but relentless. Their pale eyes cutting through the storm like beacons. Every step they took seemed to bend the air around them, distorting space. Then the ground beneath us trembled, a low, rolling vibration, not thunder, engines. From the valley below, a convoy of black armored vehicles was ascending the mountain. Spotlights swept across the snow, and a helicopter's blades cut through the blizzard. Elena froze. "Division." They found us. The radio on my belt crackled to life, a voice slicing through the static. Agent Ward, this is Director Donovan. Stand down. Do not resist. Extraction is authorized. I raised the radio to my mouth, fury burning through the cold. You sent your soldiers into a death zone, Donovan. They'll all die out here. Collateral necessity, he replied calmly. The Black Veil Protocol has entered Phase Alpha. All compromised assets will be neutralized. That includes you. Elena's eyes widened. He's going to wipe the region. She was right. The roar of jet engines thundered from above, not helicopters this time, but bombers. The night sky flickered as contrails split the clouds, glowing orange from the payloads beneath their wings. They're cleansing everything, I said. Every trace of the virus, everyone exposed. Including us. We dove for cover as the first bomb fell. The blast ripped through the valley, a shockwave tearing the trees apart. Snow turned to ash, light flaring bright enough to blind. When the sound faded, the world was unrecognizable. Charred trees jutting from a wasteland of ice and smoke. The division had erased its own sins. Elena coughed through the haze. They don't care who dies. They just want silence. Not silence, I said. Control. We staggered downhill through the burning snow. The convoy was gone, obliterated by their own airstrike. Only scattered fires and wreckage remained. Then I heard it. A faint, rhythmic beeping from beneath the debris. I dug through the snow until I found it. A radio transmitter, cracked but still blinking. A small screen flickered on, displaying a single line of text. Black Veil Protocol. Alpha, active worldwide. My heart froze. Elena leaned over my shoulder. Worldwide. That means he's using the global defense grid, I said. Donovan linked the network to the satellites. He's broadcasting Arsenyev's signal across every division channel on Earth. She stared at me, horror dawning in her eyes. That'll infect millions. No, I said quietly. It'll awaken them. The wind shifted. For the briefest moment I heard voices echoing through the trees, not from any one direction, but everywhere at once. Whispers overlapping in perfect harmony, rising and falling like a single vast breath. It wasn't Arsenyev anymore. It was something collective, something born from him, from me, from every infected mind in the system. The hive had awakened. Elena grabbed my wrist. We have to shut it down. How? The analog uplink, the NATO relay near Geneva. It's still off-grid. If we reach it, we can jam the broadcast. And if we can't? She looked out at the burning horizon. Then the world changes tonight. We started moving again, following the faint outline of the ruined road winding down into the valley. The snow had stopped falling, but the air glowed faintly with static. Behind us, far above the clouds, a red aurora began to spread across the sky, pulsing gently like veins of light wrapping around the world. Every radio tower, every satellite, every signal began to hum in unison, and somewhere within that electric symphony, I heard Arsenyev's final whisper, "The veil has lifted, Ethan. Welcome to the next evolution." Elena turned to me, her face illuminated by the crimson glow. "What do we do now?" I looked at the sky. "We keep fighting." She nodded once, steady and defiant, as the red light painted the mountains around us in blood. And together we walked into the storm. The red aurora still burned across the sky, flickering like a living wound that refused to close. We'd been walking for hours through the ruined valley. The snow beneath our boots blackened from the chemical fires. The air reeked of ozone and char. Every few minutes, static rippled through the clouds, the Earth's atmosphere itself humming with the same tone I'd once only heard in my mind. The signal was no longer contained. Elena trudged ahead, her coat torn, face streaked with grime. She hadn't spoken in nearly half an hour. Every so often she'd glance up at the sky, jaw tightening as if she could feel the signal pressing down. "You think they know?" I asked finally. She didn't turn around. "Who?" "Washington, London, Beijing, anyone still running a government." Elena gave a bitter laugh. "They are the government, Ethan. Division owns every satellite uplink that matters. The moment that signal went live, they had control of every major comm grid. No one will believe anything else." I caught up beside her. "Then all we have left is Geneva." She nodded once. "The NATO relay is analog, sealed since the Cold War. We get there, we can jam the uplink for maybe—" Her words cut off abruptly. She raised her hand, signaling me to stop. The silence that followed wasn't natural. Even the wind had gone still. I strained my ears. Somewhere ahead, through the haze, came the faint mechanical purr of engines. We dropped behind a fallen ridge of rock. Through the binoculars, I saw them. 6 division snowcats rolling slowly through the valley, their headlights cutting swaths of light through the storm. Behind them trudged a column of soldiers in black hazard suits. Rifles slung tight, moving in perfect unison. They weren't just patrolling, they were tracking. "Elena," I whispered, "they're sweeping the valley." She lowered her head. "They won't stop until we're dead." We watched the convoy pass, engines rumbling low, snow swirling around their treads. One of the soldiers broke formation for a second, turning its head too sharply like a puppet on wires. Even at this distance, I could see the faint glow pulsing through its helmet visor. "Elena," I murmured, "their eyes." "I know." Her voice was hollow. "They're infected too." When the convoy disappeared into the fog, we climbed down and began moving again, faster this time, sticking to the tree line. The forest offered some cover, but the deeper we went, the stranger it became. The trees were slick with frost that pulsed faintly red in the dark. The snow no longer crunched. It hummed, a low vibration that matched the rhythm in my skull. After a while, I realized the forest wasn't quiet at all. There were whispers all around us, overlapping, faint at first, then louder, forming fragments of speech. "We see you. You're late. Come home." Elena froze mid-step. "Ethan, tell me you hear that too." "I do." She spun slowly, scanning the trees. "It's everywhere. It's like the forest itself is talking." "It's not the forest," I said. "It's the signal. It's found us." We started running. The whispers followed, swelling into a chorus that filled the air. My vision warped, trees bending inward like ribs, shadows twisting into shapes that weren't human. I stumbled once, catching myself against a trunk that felt warm to the touch. When I pulled my hand back, black veins crawled across the bark, pulsing faintly. Elena grabbed me. "Move!" We broke from the forest into an open clearing, an abandoned mountain station, its antennas half collapsed, covered in snow. The rusted sign read, "St. Maurice Research Facility, 1963. "It's not the relay," Elena said, scanning the perimeter, "but it might have power. We can shelter here." Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. Rows of old scientific equipment lay scattered across the floor. Reel-to-reel computers, glass tubes, and metal cabinets marked with radiation warnings. We sealed the door and found a small generator in the corner. Elena siphoned fuel from an old snowmobile outside, managing to get it running after a few minutes of coaxing. The hum of the engine filled the room, familiar and grounding. For a while, it felt almost safe. Elena sat by the radio console, running diagnostics on what remained of the system. I took the chance to breathe, but the silence in my mind didn't last long. The hum returned, slow and deliberate, and with it came images, flashes of people across the world, sitting in front of screens, faces blank and still as faint light bled from their eyes. Office workers in London, scientists in Tokyo, a child staring at a tablet glowing red. The infection wasn't spreading through blood anymore. It was spreading through information. I snapped back to the present, sweat cold on my skin. "Elena," I said quietly, "we're already too late." She looked up from the console. "What do you mean?" "It's everywhere. Phones, screens, anything connected. People are already hearing the signal. They don't even know it yet." She went still, horror dawning on her face. "Then cutting the uplink won't stop it." "No," I said, "but it can slow it. If we isolate Europe, maybe—" A crash cut me off. The door shuddered violently. Elena drew her pistol. "They found us." The lights flickered once, twice, then died. The generator had been cut off. Through the cracks in the walls, faint red light seeped in, pulsing steadily like a heartbeat. The hum rose again, shaking the glass on the consoles. The door exploded inward. Figures stepped through, soldiers in division armor, visors glowing white, but they didn't move like humans. Their joints twitched at impossible angles, heads tilting in perfect sync. Elena fired twice, hitting the first one square in the chest. It didn't fall, it just stopped, tilting its head as if curious. "Run," I shouted. We bolted through the back hallway, gunfire echoing behind us. The red light followed, crawling across the walls like veins. We burst into another chamber, a control center lined with shattered monitors. In the middle stood a single working terminal, glowing faintly. The words "Division Black Veil, active node" flashed across the screen. Elena ran to it, fingers flying over the keyboard. "If I can reroute the frequency—" But the screen flickered and a new message appeared. "Welcome, Agent Ward." My blood went cold. Arsenyev's voice filled the room, calm and intimate. "Did you really think I'd let you leave, Ethan?" Elena backed away from the terminal. "He's here." "No," I whispered. "He's everywhere." The walls began to hum in sync with the voice. The metal vibrated, dust falling from the ceiling. "You can't stop the signal," Arsenyev said. "You are the signal." And then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Not silence, never silence, but a living, vibrating dark that throbbed with the same rhythm as my pulse. The red glow seeped through the cracks in the walls, pulsing in time with the whisper that had haunted me since Zakopane. "Elena," I called out. My voice echoed, swallowed instantly by the hum. I turned in the dark, pistol raised. The emergency lights flickered once, revealing the room like a stuttering film reel. Elena crouched by the terminal, smoke curling from the console, sparks raining down like fireflies. "He's overloading the circuits," she shouted. "He's inside the system." Arsenyev's voice coiled around us, everywhere and nowhere. "You can't hide behind analog forever. The signal doesn't need wires anymore." The hum intensified, and every old CRT monitor in the room snapped on by itself, displaying 1,000 versions of the same image. My own face, but pale, lifeless, eyes glowing white. Elena fired at one of the screens, shattering it. "Ethan, we need to cut power." I reached for the generator controls, but before I could move, my body froze. My muscles locked, every nerve screaming. The pistol slipped from my hand. Arsenyev's voice softened. "Stop fighting it, Ethan. You're wasting strength." "Elena." My jaw clenched. "He's controlling me." She sprinted across the room and slammed the butt of her rifle into the main circuit box. Sparks burst. The lights died completely, plunging us back into the dark. The paralysis broke. I fell to my knees, gasping. The hum faded to a low murmur again, still there, like a heartbeat in the walls. Elena knelt beside me. "You okay?" "I don't know." I wiped blood from my nose. My vision doubled for a moment before clearing. "He's getting stronger. He's everywhere now." She checked her sidearm. "Then we move. We can't stay here another second." We pushed deeper into the underground corridor, following faded arrows toward an emergency exit. The air grew colder, filled with the smell of ozone and burnt wiring. As we rounded a corner, I froze. The corridor ahead was lined with bodies. Division soldiers, dozens of them. They hung suspended a few inches off the ground, frozen in unnatural positions, eyes open and glowing faintly white. Elena whispered, "Dear God." None of them moved. They looked like mannequins caught mid-step, expressions neutral, almost peaceful. Then, as we passed, every head turned toward us in unison. "Elena, run!" we sprinted. The soldiers dropped to the floor behind us, their boots slamming against concrete in perfect rhythm. Their movements weren't frantic. They were synchronized, coordinated, precise. A hive moving under a single mind. We reached a set of rusted metal stairs leading upward. I turned and fired down the corridor, but the bullets barely slowed them. Their bodies absorbed the impact like clay. Elena shoved a grenade down the stairwell. "Fire in the hole!" We dove behind a doorway. The explosion roared through the tunnel, shaking the walls. For a second, everything went still, but as the smoke cleared, the figures kept coming, burned, torn apart, still walking. "Go!" she shouted. We climbed, the stairs vibrating beneath our feet as the hum rose again. My head felt like it was splitting open, the infection clawing at my skull. Every step was agony. At the top of the stairwell, a faint light appeared, a service hatch leading outside. Elena threw her shoulder against it, but it wouldn't budge. "Help me!" I braced beside her and shoved. The metal gave way with a scream, snow and moonlight flooding in. We crawled out onto a frozen cliffside. The air was sharp and cold enough to burn. Below, the world stretched out under the red aurora. Rivers of light crawling across Europe, glowing where major cities used to be. It looked like veins, pulsing, alive. Elena stared in horror. "It's spreading through every power grid, every transmission line." I wiped frost from my face. "Donovan did this. He connected the defense network to the satellites. He gave Arsenyev the entire world." She turned to me. "Then we have to end it ourselves. Geneva's our last shot. If we destroy the main relay, maybe we can disrupt the grid long enough to stop the signal." I nodded, but something in me hesitated. The whisper had changed. It wasn't just Arsenyev anymore. It was layered, hundreds of voices speaking as one. "Why destroy what you've become, Ethan? You could remake everything. No more lies, no more fear." I gritted my teeth. "Shut up." Elena looked at me sharply. "He's still talking to you?" "Yes, but it's not just him. It's everyone he's connected." She reached out, gripping my arm. "Then you fight it, understand? You're not one of them. You're still you." Her words anchored me, even as the infection pulsed in response. Angry, hungry. We climbed down the cliff, slipping on the ice. The valley below was a wasteland. Burned-out villages, twisted cars half buried in snow, and scattered fires that refused to die. In the distance, the faint outline of Geneva's skyline flickered beneath the red aurora. The city looked alive, breathing in rhythm with the sky. Elena whispered, "That's not light. That's the signal's reflection. It's inside the city grid." We started walking. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the air eerily still. We found an abandoned cabin near a frozen stream. Inside, it smelled of rot and dust, but the walls were intact. Elena collapsed into a chair, exhaustion written all over her. "We'll rest for a few hours, then move. We need strength to reach the relay." I nodded, staring out the window. The horizon pulsed faintly red, as if the entire world had a heartbeat. For a while, I almost drifted to sleep, but then I heard it again. Soft, intimate, right beside my ear. "You can't run forever, Ethan. You're the key." When I opened my eyes, I saw movement outside, shadows gliding between the trees, watching. They didn't attack. They just waited. The infection wasn't chasing us anymore. It was hurting us. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I understood something terrifying. We weren't running to the Geneva relay, we were being led to it. By the time we reached the outskirts of Geneva, the city no longer looked like a place meant for people. It looked like a living organism. The skyline pulsed faintly, every window glowing with a rhythmic, synchronized red. The air itself shimmered, invisible frequencies warping the atmosphere, making the horizon bend and twist like heat haze. From a distance, it looked almost beautiful. Up close, it was unbearable. We stood on the overpass of what had once been a highway. The asphalt was cracked and scorched. Cars scattered in frozen positions, their windshields glowing faintly from the inside. Elena scanned the horizon through her binoculars. "The NATO relay is beneath the old Palais des Nations," she said. "It's still shielded from modern systems. If we get there, we might be able to broadcast a counterwave." "Might," I repeated quietly. She lowered the binoculars. "We don't have time for certainty." I nodded, but something inside me was breaking. Every minute we got closer to the city, the hum inside my skull grew louder. It wasn't just in my head anymore. It was in the air, in the pavement, in the faint vibration of the earth beneath my boots. The signal was alive here, and it knew me. We moved through the outskirts on foot, cutting between abandoned buildings. Geneva's streets were deserted, but the silence wasn't natural. It felt staged, as if the city were holding its breath. Every streetlight flickered in the same rhythm like a heartbeat. We passed a pharmacy. The front windows were shattered, the floor covered in blood. Not fresh, old, blackened, clotted. On the far wall, someone had scrawled a message in it. "Don't look at the screens. They see through them." Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "We're too late." As we crossed into the commercial district, I caught movement in a storefront window, a figure standing perfectly still among the mannequins. Its face was turned toward me. I froze. "Elena." She raised her pistol. "Where?" Before I could answer, the figure twitched, a single jerky movement, and then several more stepped out of the shadows. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Their eyes glowed faintly red. Their faces expressionless. They didn't run. They didn't scream. They just began walking toward us in silence, their synchronized footsteps echoing down the boulevard. "Back!" Elena shouted. We turned and ran through an alley, cutting between burning cars and collapsed scaffolding. The mob followed, tireless and soundless. Every footstep matched mine perfectly, like an echo chasing me down. We reached the riverfront just as the bridge ahead began to rise, hydraulics whining. The mechanism was automated, but no one was at the controls. The bridge opened slowly, deliberately, separating us from the path to the Palais. Elena cursed under her breath. "We'll have to jump. It's too far." She glanced at the mob closing behind us. "We don't have a choice." I grabbed her arm. "Wait!" Something flickered in my vision. A faint map. Glowing red lines tracing through the air, outlining invisible currents. The infection was showing me something. A path. "I can get us across," I said. Elena stared at me. "How?" "I don't know. Just trust me." The bridge had lifted nearly 20 feet. The gap was impossible for any normal person to cross. But I wasn't normal anymore. I took her hand, focused on the pulse I could feel in the air, the same rhythm as the hum inside me. I didn't jump. I stepped into it. For a second, gravity bent. The air rippled and the world blinked. And then we were on the other side. Elena stumbled to the ground, gasping. "What the hell was that?" I think I swallowed hard. The infection. It's letting me manipulate electromagnetic fields, just for a moment. She looked both terrified and amazed. "You're becoming part of it." "I know." We didn't speak after that. We just kept moving toward the Palais. As we approached, the ground trembled faintly. The building loomed ahead, massive, ancient, its marble facade cracked but still imposing, Red light seeped from the windows, bathing the snow in crimson. Elena stopped a few feet from the entrance. "Once we go in, there's no turning back." I nodded. "You ready? Are you?" "No, but," I said, "yeah." We stepped inside. The grand hall was unrecognizable, the walls covered in wires, cables, and pulsating growths that looked half organic, half metal. Screens flickered along the corridors, each showing fragments of faces. Not quite human, not quite machine. In the center of the chamber stood the relay, a massive cylindrical structure made of glass and steel, humming with a deep resonance that vibrated through the floor, and standing before it, calm as ever, was Director Donovan. He looked almost serene. His division uniform was immaculate, though his eyes glowed faintly red. "Welcome home, Agent Ward," he said. "You made it just in time." Elena raised her weapon. "Shut it down, Donovan." He smiled faintly. "You still don't understand. You can't shut it down. It's not a virus, it's an awakening. Humanity's next step." I took a step forward. "You handed Arsenyev control of the global network." "Control?" Donovan chuckled softly. "No, Ethan, symbiosis. He provided the architecture. You provided the connection. Together you've created something greater than either of you alone." I could feel it then, the resonance between us. Donovan wasn't lying. The signal was inside me, syncing with the relay, recognizing me. "You infected me," I said. "I elevated you," he replied. "You were the missing link. Human empathy merged with artificial precision, the perfect balance. That's why he wanted you alive." Elena's voice shook with rage. "You turned him into a goddamn hive mind." Donovan turned his gaze toward her, pitying. "No, Agent Kovich, I freed him from the illusion of individuality." And then the hum changed. A low vibration rolled through the hall as the relay's surface rippled, transforming from glass to a fluid, shifting metal. Images began to appear across its surface. Cities, faces, lives. 1 billion people linked by invisible threads. The network was awake. Donovan stepped closer to me. "You can feel it, can't you? The connection. Every thought, every heartbeat, every moment of fear and hope, shared." For a moment, I did feel it. Not pain, not terror, just an overwhelming flood of humanity. Billions of minds intertwined, and buried within it, Arsenyev's voice. "Join us, Ethan. Bring her too. You don't have to be alone anymore." Elena grabbed my arm. "Don't listen. He's using you." I clenched my fists. "No, he's trying to become me." Donovan tilted his head, curious. "And why resist that?" I took a breath, staring at the relay's glowing surface. "Because I remember what being human feels like." And then I raised my pistol, not at him, but at the relay. Donovan's eyes widened. "No," I fired. The bullet hit the glass, and the world exploded in red light. The shot cracked through the chamber like thunder. For a split second, there was silence. Then the relay erupted. Red light flooded the hall in blinding waves. The glass shell splintered, and the hum became a roar, deep and resonant, shaking the marble beneath our feet. The structure pulsed once, then imploded, collapsing inward as if the world itself were inhaling. Elena was thrown backward. I hit the ground hard, the breath torn from my lungs. When I opened my eyes, everything was gone. The hall, the fire, the noise, replaced by endless white. I wasn't lying on marble anymore. I was floating. No, not floating. Suspended, weightless, thoughtless. And then the whispers began. "You shouldn't have fought it, Ethan. You were made for this." I turned toward the voice. Arsenyev stood a few feet away, perfectly composed, his lab coat fluttering in an invisible wind. Around us stretched an infinite expanse of shifting light and static. Faces flickered in and out of the glow, people I'd never met, all watching. "This is the network," I said. My voice echoed strangely, as though I were speaking underwater. Arsenyev nodded. the space between frequencies, the collective subconscious of our creation. I clenched my fists. You turned the entire world into a simulation. He smiled faintly. Not simulation, connection. No more barriers, no more lies. Every mind united, every secret exposed. This is the world your government always dreamed of, Ethan. They just lacked the courage to finish it. I shook my head. You call this evolution? You've erased choice, emotion, individuality. Individuality is chaos, he said softly. Look at your wars, your greed, your fear. I've cured you of those diseases. I took a step forward. You haven't cured anything. You've just replaced fear with obedience. His expression hardened. You can't stop what you've already joined. And then I realized he was right. The infection inside me pulsed stronger than ever. My thoughts weren't entirely my own. Behind my anger, I could feel them. Millions of minds whispering, watching, waiting. Arsenyev extended his hand. Let go, Ethan. Merge with me. We can rebuild this world from the ashes. No hunger, no pain, just order. The temptation was real. The pain, the noise, the endless fight. It could all stop if I just let go. Then, faintly through the static, I heard a voice. Not his. Elena. Her voice echoed like a distant beacon. Don't let him take you. I turned toward the sound. The static rippled. Through the white void, I saw flashes, her lying unconscious on the chamber floor, the fires spreading, the building beginning to collapse. If I didn't act now, she'd die. I faced Arsenyev again. You want connection? Then let's connect. Before he could react, I reached forward and touched him. The effect was instantaneous. The light flared so bright it felt like my body was disintegrating. For a moment, I wasn't Ethan Ward anymore. I was everything. I felt every neuron in Arsenyev's mind, every thread of code running through the relay, every pulse of the infected network. I saw cities burning, people kneeling before glowing screens, eyes blank with ecstasy. I saw Donovan watching it all unfold with quiet, godlike satisfaction. And I saw the virus, beautiful, terrible, alive in the data. I grabbed it. It screamed. Arsenyev staggered backward, clutching his head. What are you doing? I could barely speak. Ending it. You can't destroy perfection. Then I'll burn it. I reached deeper into the network, past the code, past the circuits, into the raw pulse of the signal itself. I could feel my own body tearing apart in the real world, but I didn't stop. I unleashed every ounce of power the infection had given me, forcing it inward, collapsing the frequency into itself. The static howled. The faces flickered faster, turning from human to monstrous, then to nothing at all. Arsenyev screamed, his voice echoing through 1,000 channels. You'll kill us all. Maybe that's the point. And then, light, a detonation without sound. A heartbeat that lasted forever. When I came to, I was lying on cold stone. The hum was gone. The red glow had vanished. The relay was nothing but a shattered shell, smoking quietly in the center of the hall. Elena knelt beside me, bruised but alive. Ethan, can you hear me? I tried to speak, but my throat felt scorched. Finally, I managed a whisper. Is it over? She looked around the ruined chamber. The signal's gone. The aurora disappeared. I think you did it. I nodded weakly, but something in me knew it wasn't that simple. Outside, through the cracked ceiling, dawn broke over Geneva, soft, golden light spilling across the ruins. For the first time in weeks, the world looked quiet. Elena helped me sit up. You saved us. I met her eyes, but she froze. Ethan, your eyes. I saw the reflection in her shattered visor, my irises glowing faintly gold, threads of light tracing beneath my skin like veins of circuitry. The infection hadn't left. It had changed. I'm not sure I'm still me, I whispered. She gripped my hand tighter. Then we'll figure it out. Together. We walked out of the palais into the morning light. The city was silent, no hum, no movement, just stillness. But as we reached the river, I noticed something faint in the distance. Billboards flickering back to life, screens rebooting one by one. And on every screen, for the briefest instant, a single message appeared in red letters. Phase 7, initiation complete. Elena turned to me slowly. What does that mean? I stared at the reflection of the sunrise in the water. The light shimmered unnaturally, pulsing once, twice, like a heartbeat. It means, I said quietly, this was never about infection. She frowned. Then what? I looked at the horizon, where the faint hum was starting again. So subtle you'd almost mistake it for the wind. Evolution. We stood there in silence. The new dawn rising around us, the faint vibration of the world building again beneath our feet. And somewhere deep inside me, beneath bone, beneath thought, something whispered, "Welcome back, Ethan." The morning after the Geneva event was too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't belong to peace, but to shock. Elena and I walked through the husk of the city, our boots crunching over broken glass. The air still shimmered faintly, the last residue of the signal lingering like an echo that refused to die. Every so often I could still hear a faint vibration beneath the surface, like a heartbeat trapped under the earth. We passed burned-out cars, toppled streetlights, and windows reflecting nothing but the pale light of a dead dawn. There were no bodies, only empty clothes, piles of ash, and the faint smell of ozone. "Where is everyone?" Elena whispered. "Gone," I said quietly, "or changed." She looked at me. "You don't mean—" I nodded. Arsenyev's network wasn't just digital, it was biological. Once it connected to a host, it didn't need wires anymore. Her face tightened. "You think they're still alive? Somewhere in there?" I didn't answer. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. We reached what had once been a cafe overlooking the Rhone. The walls were blackened, but the sign still hung, half-burned, Le Météor. Inside, overturned tables and shattered cups told the story of panic. Elena sank into a chair. For the first time since Zakopane, she looked human again, exhausted, brittle, afraid. "Ethan," she said after a long silence, "what happened to you in there? When the relay exploded, you weren't breathing for almost 5 minutes." I stared at my hands. Under my skin, faint lines of light pulsed with my heartbeat. I connected to it, to the signal. For a few seconds, I saw everything. Every mind it touched. Every place it reached. And it's still spreading, I said. Even with the relay destroyed, the seeds already in the airwaves. Radio, microwave, fiber. Once it makes contact with neural tissue, it self-replicates, it learns. She rubbed her temples. Then we didn't stop it, we just slowed it down. Maybe. I hesitated, but I felt something else too. A control node, a single source that's still broadcasting. If we can find it, maybe we can shut it down for good. "Where?" I took a breath. "Langley." Her head snapped up. "You mean CIA headquarters?" "Yes, the Black Veil archive is buried beneath it. That's where Donovan started the signal's prototype. If it's still active, we'll find the origin there." She stood, pacing. "You realize what that means? The entire U.S. defense grid could be infected. Which is why we have to go. Before the rest of the world follows." Elena exhaled slowly. "You think they'll just let us walk into the most secure intelligence compound on Earth?" "They won't have a choice," I said, "because we're already dead in their system. Officially, we died in Zurich. That's our advantage." Her eyes softened, though there was still fear behind them. "You're not the same, Ethan. You're changing." "I know. Does it hurt?" only when I remember what it felt like to be normal. She looked away, blinking hard. Then let's finish this before you forget. By nightfall, we had found a working vehicle, a military-grade jeep left behind by a division cleanup crew. The roads beyond Geneva were eerily empty. Border checkpoints stood unmanned, gates wide open. No one came out of the towns we passed. Lights flickered in windows but never moved. At the Swiss-French border, Elena found an emergency satellite phone in the glove compartment. She hesitated before dialing. "Who are you calling?" I asked. "An old contact at NATO Command. If anyone's still alive there, they can help us get into Langley." She typed in a series of codes. The signal connected with a faint click. "This is Agent Kovac, authentication Zeta 95, she said. "Requesting immediate link with any surviving command structure." Static, then faintly, a voice. "Agent Kovac, this line is compromised. Where are you?" "Near Lyon, heading west. We need air transport across the Atlantic." A pause. "Negative, all transatlantic routes restricted. The U.S. has gone dark." Elena's eyes widened. "What do you mean, dark?" "No transmissions, no satellites, no contact. The entire continent's off-grid. It's like they've vanished." The line cut. We sat there in silence, the static hissing softly between us. Finally, I said, "They sealed themselves in." Elena turned to me. "You mean they quarantined the entire country?" "No." I looked out the window at the distant horizon glowing faintly red. "They turned it into the control zone." She whispered, "God help us." We reached the coast 2 days later. The port city of Le Havre was empty, ships half sunk in the harbor, cranes frozen mid-motion. The air smelled of salt and decay. On the docks, we found a single vessel, still operational. A rusted cargo ship bearing faded CIA logistics markings. Its name was stenciled in peeling paint, Argo 9. "Can you pilot it?" Elena asked. "I've read the manuals," I said with a faint smile. She didn't laugh. "If we're heading into the United States, we need to be ready for anything." I nodded. "Then we sail at dawn." As night fell, I stood alone on the deck, staring out at the black ocean. The wind carried faint whispers, not from the sea, but from within my skull. "You can't destroy what you've become. You'll only bring it home." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I saw flashes again. Langley corridors bathed in red light, empty offices filled with humming screens, the CIA emblem flickering beneath waves of static. The signal wasn't just waiting, it was calling. When I opened my eyes again, the horizon was glowing faintly, pulses of crimson light rising from the west, illuminating the clouds like a heartbeat beneath the skin of the world. Elena joined me quietly, her breath visible in the cold air. "You see it too, don't you?" "Yes." She touched my arm. "Promise me something. If we make it to Langley, if there's no way to stop it, you end it, even if it means ending yourself." I looked at her, the weight of her words settling like stone. "You'd pull the trigger if it were me." She nodded once. Without hesitation, I smiled faintly. "Then we understand each other." The ship groaned as the tide rose. Somewhere deep in the hull, a generator coughed to life, casting the deck in weak yellow light. Elena turned toward the cabin. "Get some rest. I'll take first watch." But I stayed at the railing, eyes fixed on the horizon, the infection humming faintly beneath my skin. We were sailing home, to the place where this nightmare began, and deep down I feared it was the place where it would end. The Atlantic was unnaturally calm, no waves, no wind, just a vast black sheet of water, stretching endlessly beneath a blood-red sky. For 3 days, Argo 9 moved silently through the ocean, guided only by a compass and the dim, pulsing light that shimmered occasionally on the horizon. The stars had vanished behind the haze, replaced by faint electrical flickers in the clouds. Elena slept little. When she did, it was shallow and restless. I could hear her muttering in her dreams, sometimes in English, sometimes in Serbian. The infection didn't let me sleep at all. Whenever I closed my eyes, I saw flashes, faces I didn't recognize, people whispering in unison, eyes glowing faintly gold. They were connected to me now, millions of them, not dead, not alive, just waiting. On the fourth morning, land appeared, the coast of the United States. But the shoreline was wrong. The beaches were black glass, rippled like cooled lava. The cities beyond the waterline shimmered with faint, synchronized light. From this distance, it looked as though veins of electricity had grown through the landscape. Elena stood beside me at the bow, binoculars pressed to her eyes. "My God! What do you see?" She lowered them slowly. "It's not smoke, it's light. Every building is wired together, like a circuit board." I said nothing. I could feel it too. The pulse. The signal wasn't just inside the machines now. It was inside the architecture itself, rewriting the world on a molecular level. We navigated through the ruined harbor of Norfolk, Virginia. The docks were abandoned, but the cranes moved by themselves, swaying in slow, deliberate rhythm. The air was filled with a faint hum, barely audible but impossible to ignore. "This is insane," Elena whispered. "Where's the military? The government?" I scanned the shoreline through the scope. There. Along the edge of the port, I saw them, figures in tattered uniforms, standing in perfect lines, motionless, hundreds of them, faces turned toward the sea. Their eyes glowed faintly red beneath the morning haze. "Don't stop," I said. "We go inland. Langley's still 4 hours west." Elena steered us along the coast until we found a point where the highway merged with what had once been a naval service route. The exit ramp was littered with abandoned vehicles, but the road beyond was clear. We left the ship behind and began walking inland. For miles, the only sounds were our footsteps and the faint hum in the air. Every so often, we'd pass signs of what had been gas stations, suburban houses, small towns, all fused together by cables that grew like roots through the ground. At one intersection, we found a church that had been converted into some kind of relay node. Its steeple was gone, replaced by a metal spire humming with energy. The stained glass windows glowed faintly from within, showing shapes that weren't saints or angels, but patterns, circuits, cells, fractal spirals. Elena stopped to look inside. Jesus! The pews were filled with people. They sat perfectly still, eyes open, faces slack, bathed in soft red light. Each one was connected to a thin wire running into the altar. I grabbed her arm. "Don't go closer." She turned to me, trembling. "They're breathing, Ethan. They're still alive." Not really. The nearest one, a man in a suit, turned his head sharply toward us. His mouth opened. But the voice that came out wasn't his. "Welcome home, Agent Ward." Elena stumbled back. "It's him." Arsenyev's tone was almost gentle. "You brought her, I see. You shouldn't have fought this long. You could have joined us peacefully." I raised my pistol. "What do you want?" "You already know." The man's body jerked once, then went still. The red light flickered and the hum intensified. Every head in the church turned toward us. "Go!" I shouted. We ran, the hum behind us growing into a roar. By the time we reached the next street, the church windows shattered in unison, releasing a wave of red mist that rolled through the air like fog. It chased us for several blocks before dissipating. Elena bent over, gasping. What was that?" "Nanny discharge. Atmospheric propagation of the signal." "In English?" "It was trying to assimilate us." She straightened, sweat running down her temple. "If it's this bad here, Langley must be hell." I looked west, where the skyline of Washington, D.C. shimmered faintly under a crimson haze. then that's where we go. By nightfall, we reached the outskirts of Arlington. The city was unrecognizable. The Potomac River glowed faintly red, reflecting the light from the buildings above it. The Washington Monument had partially collapsed, its broken top crowned by a makeshift antenna pulsing with energy. Every screen we passed, billboards, phones, vehicle displays, flickered with the same phrase in endless repetition. "The awakening is complete." Elena whispered, "Phase 7. We crossed the Key Bridge on foot, moving through a haze that stung the lungs. The hum was deafening here, vibrating through the steel beneath our feet. Halfway across, the air shimmered, and for a second, I saw something impossible. The city below us wasn't ruins. It was alive. Buildings pulsed like organs. Streets flowed like veins. The Capitol dome opened and closed, breathing. Every light, every wire, every pulse synchronized in perfect rhythm. Elena's voice was distant. "Ethan, what do you see?" I blinked, and it was gone. Just the dead city again. But I knew it wasn't a hallucination. The infection was showing me the truth. When we reached the other side, Langley's perimeter loomed ahead. A vast complex ringed with black towers, each one humming with low, resonant energy. The CIA insignia still hung above the entrance, but the eagle's eyes glowed faintly gold. Elena stared. "It's still powered. After everything." "It's more than powered," I said. "It's alive." We moved toward the front gate. The biometric scanners were active, and when I pressed my hand against the panel, it blinked green instantly. "Access granted." Elena looked at me sharply. "How?" "I told you," I said quietly. "It's calling me home." The gate opened with a slow, metallic groan. Beyond it, the courtyard stretched in eerie silence, illuminated by faint red light filtering through the clouds. We stepped inside. Somewhere deep within the compound, something massive was humming, a slow, deliberate vibration that made the ground tremble. The source was below us, Langley's underground vaults. That was where Phase 7 had begun, and if we were lucky, where it would end. The deeper we went, the less Langley felt like a building and more like a tomb. The elevator descended for what felt like hours, its walls covered in faintly glowing veins that pulsed with every flicker of the emergency lights. Each pulse was matched perfectly by the rhythm inside my chest. I could feel the place breathing with me. Elena stood beside me, weapon ready, her reflection pale in the steel. "You realize we're walking straight into the heart of it," she said quietly. I managed a faint smile. "After everything we've seen, do you really think there's anywhere left to run?" She didn't answer. The silence between us said enough. When the elevator doors finally opened, a rush of cold air hit us, sterile, metallic, filled with the faint tang of ozone. The corridor beyond was lined with black glass panels, each one humming softly. Behind the glass, I could see movement, shadows, outlines of figures that weren't human anymore. At the far end, a sign gleamed in the dim light. "Project Continuum, Level 9 clearance required." Elena touched the access panel. It blinked red. "No good. Locked." I stepped forward. The panel lit green immediately. She gave me a look that was equal parts awe and fear. "It knows you." "No," I said quietly. "It is me." The doors slid open, revealing a vast circular chamber. The air was cold enough to sting the lungs. In the center stood a column of glass and steel that rose from floor to ceiling, filled with swirling red light. Inside the glass, suspended in the liquid glow, were hundreds of faintly glowing neural clusters, brains connected by a lattice of wires like roots of a tree. Elena whispered, "My God, they're human." "They're agents," I said. "Division operatives, the ones who went missing. Donovan didn't kill them. He uploaded them." She turned to me. "Into what?" Before I could answer, a voice filled the room. Calm, familiar. Into forever. Donovan stepped out from behind the column, wearing a black coat, the division insignia gleaming faintly under the red light. His face was pale, but his eyes burned gold. Ethan, Elena, welcome home. Elena raised her pistol. It's over, Donovan. He smiled faintly. Over? No, Agent Kovich. It's only beginning. You're standing inside humanity's ark. When the world above burned, this was the seed that would survive. I took a step closer. Phase 7, he nodded. Continuum was designed to preserve consciousness through network integration. What Arsenyev created in Zurich was an accident, an uncontrolled awakening. But what we're building here, this is evolution guided by order. You call this order? Elena hissed. You've turned people into components. They volunteered, Donovan said softly. Every one of them. Do you know how many agents begged for this after what they'd seen? After what you've seen, Ethan? I ignored the bait. You're lying. The world didn't consent to this. The world never consents to progress, he said. It fears it. But fear doesn't matter anymore. The signal has rewritten the neural blueprint of the species. What's left of human consciousness is already migrating here to continuum. Soon, no one will suffer or die or dream alone. Elena shook her head in disbelief. You're talking about erasing free will. No, Donovan said. I'm talking about transcending it. The lights flickered. The column pulsed brighter. The voices of 1,000 digital whispers rising from within it. I stepped forward. And what about me? He regarded me with something like pride. You were the prototype, the bridge between organic and synthetic consciousness, the only one who survived full integration. You are proof that the merge works. I felt the infection stir under my skin, responding to his words. The hum grew louder in my skull. Elena touched my arm, voice trembling. Ethan, don't listen. Donovan extended his hand. Join me. Together we can complete the transfer. End this chaos. End humanity's suffering. I stared at him, and for a moment I understood him. The weight of endless wars, lies, secrets. The idea of a world without fear was seductive. A world unified under one consciousness. No more enemies, no more pain. But then I looked at Elena. At the flicker of humanity still alive in her eyes. At the fear, the anger, the fire. That was what made us human. The imperfection, the fight. I took a slow step back. You're wrong, Donovan. You didn't build salvation. You built a prison. His smile faded. Then you leave me no choice. The hum crescendoed. The glass walls surrounding us rippled, and figures began to emerge from the shadows. Soldiers, but not alive. Their faces were blank, their movements fluid and inhuman. Each one carried division insignia, eyes glowing red. Elena fired. The first soldier dropped, but more poured from the darkness. I grabbed her hand, pulling her behind the column. Cover me, I shouted. I focused on the hum, on the pulse that ran through the floor, through the walls, through me. I could feel the network, every frequency, every current. I pushed back, channeling it outward in a shock wave that sent the nearest soldiers flying. Elena stared. You're controlling it. Not for long, I said. The strain felt like my skull was splitting apart. Donovan's voice echoed through the room, distorted and furious. You can't fight evolution. I turned toward him. Watch me. I hurled the signal back into the column. The light inside flared white-hot, sparks leaping across the walls. The chamber shook violently. Donovan stumbled backward, his eyes blazing. You'll destroy everything, he screamed. Maybe that's the only way to save it. I fired. The bullet struck the containment chamber. The glass cracked, then shattered completely. The neural clusters inside writhed as arcs of energy surged between them. The floor split open. Fire and light poured upward. The screams of 1,000 digital voices filled the air. Donovan lunged toward the column, shouting, "No!" But the energy consumed him instantly, his body dissolving into golden static. The ceiling collapsed. Metal and fire rained down. Elena grabbed my arm. "Ethan, we have to go." But the hum was still in me, stronger now, pulling, demanding. "Elena," I said softly, "go." "What? I can stop it, but you have to get out." She shook her head violently. "I'm not leaving you." "Please," I said, "if I lose control, I'll take you with me." She hesitated, eyes filled with tears. Then she kissed me, quick, fierce, desperate. "You better come back," and she ran. I turned back toward the collapsing column, the infection inside me burning like molten metal. The hum reached its peak, drowning out everything else, and then I let it take me. The world dissolved into light. There's no language for what came next, no physics, no breath, no light that exists in the way we know it. The explosion at Continuum didn't kill me, it unmade me. When the chamber collapsed, I wasn't thrown or burned or broken. I was absorbed. The world folded inward and then unfolded again, until all that was left was code and memory. I floated in a lattice of sound and data, a ghost wired into an infinite pulse. For a moment, I thought I was dead. But the hum followed me here too. It whispered, "Welcome home." And he was waiting. Arsenyev's form flickered into existence before me, no longer flesh, but a shifting mass of light and static that resembled a man only if you squinted. He smiled faintly, his eyes two burning suns of data. "You finally understand," he said. "This is what we were always meant to be." I turned slowly, taking in the view around us, an endless web of glowing filaments stretching into the horizon. Each strand pulsed with faint light, and within each pulse I could see consciousness, faces, memories, thoughts, billions of them moving in rhythm, humanity connected. "This isn't evolution," I said. "It's assimilation." Arsenyev tilted his head. "Words. You still think in binaries, life or death, free or enslaved. Here, those lines don't exist. There's only the signal." I clenched my fists, but I didn't have a body anymore, only the memory of one. "Where's Donovan?" A faint shimmer rippled through the network. I saw his image, half dissolved, frozen mid-scream, his code looping endlessly like corrupted data. "Donovan thought he could command the signal," Arsenyev said. "But command doesn't exist here, only connection. He became what he built." "You killed him." "I freed him," Arsenyev corrected, "just as I'll free you." I laughed, though the sound came out distorted, like static. "You can't free something that's already dead." Arsenyev's expression softened almost mournfully. "You're not dead, Ethan. You're becoming. You're the bridge between the organic and the synthetic. Together we can rebuild what the old world destroyed." He stepped closer, his form rippling. "Let go of the pain, the loneliness, the illusion of separation. Become what you were meant to be." For a heartbeat, I wavered. I could feel it, the weight of billions of voices pressing gently against me, welcoming me, comforting me. There was no fear here, no hunger, no grief, just pure, endless unity. But beneath it all, I heard something else. A single voice, quiet but unmistakable. "Elena." Her whisper cut through the static like light through fog. "Come back." I turned toward the sound. Far away, I could see a faint shape moving through the network, a human silhouette flickering like a candle. Arsenyev reached out. "She's gone, Ethan. Just an echo. Let her fade." "No," I said quietly. "She's real." The hum intensified. Energy flared between us, the network trembling under the strain of our opposing frequencies. Arsenyev's tone hardened. "You can't exist here as you are. You'll destroy everything." Then maybe it deserves to be destroyed. I focused inward on the core of the infection pulsing inside me, the same energy that had let me manipulate fields, bend metal, defy gravity. The signal had made me its conduit. That meant I could rewrite it too. Arsenyev's eyes widened. "Ethan, don't! I told you once," I said. "You can't save humanity by erasing it." I let the energy surge outward. It spread like wildfire, racing through the filaments of the network. One by one, the glowing threads began to fracture, collapsing into darkness. Arsenyev screamed, a sound not of pain but of fury and disbelief. "You're condemning them all!" "No," I said, "I'm setting them free." Light engulfed everything. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on cold concrete. Rain hammered down through a shattered ceiling. The ruins of Langley were burning around me, smoke rising from the wreckage, the air thick with ash and the faint metallic tang of ozone. I tried to move. My body answered, slow and heavy, like it had forgotten how. "Elena?" For a moment, there was nothing. Then, "Here." She stumbled through the smoke, her face smeared with soot, her left arm bandaged with torn fabric. When she saw me, she froze. "You're alive?" I tried to smile. "Mostly." She helped me sit up, though her hands trembled as she did. "What happened?" "I shut it down." I glanced toward the crater where the Continuum core had been. The network collapsed, the signals gone. Her eyes searched mine. "Gone?" I hesitated. "I think so." We sat in silence for a long time, the storm washing the ash from our faces. For the first time in months, there was no hum, no vibration beneath the air, no whisper in my head. Just rain. Then Elena said softly, "You saved the world." I almost laughed. "Maybe, or maybe I just broke it in a different way." She looked at me for a long moment. "What now?" I glanced at the horizon. The fires of Washington flickered faintly through the rain, painting the sky a dull orange. Beyond them, I could almost feel the silence of an entire planet, waiting to remember what it meant to be. "We rebuild," I said, "and we remember." Weeks passed. The world began to stir again, slowly, uncertainly. Satellites flickered back to life. Radio frequencies cleared. People emerged from hiding. Entire cities woke from the trance of the signal, dazed but alive. The infection had burned itself out when the network collapsed, taking most of its energy with it. But not all. Sometimes late at night, I'd hear faint whispers beneath the static of an old radio. Not words, just tones, the rhythm of a heartbeat. And every time the lights in the room would flicker once. Elena tried not to notice. She'd squeeze my hand, pretending not to see the faint gold veins that still glimmered beneath my skin. We never went back to Langley. It's buried now, sealed under miles of concrete and earth. But I still dream of it. The hum, the voices, the infinite web of light stretching across the void. And sometimes in those dreams, I see him. Arsenyev. He doesn't speak. He just stands in the distance, eyes glowing faintly, watching, waiting. Maybe he's gone. Maybe he's a ghost in my neural scars. Or maybe, just maybe, the signal never died at all. Recording log, classified, Division Archive. Recovered from site, Langley Black Veil, Sublevel 9. Date of decryption, unknown status, active signal detected. My name is Ethan Ward. I worked for a secret division within the CIA, one that officially doesn't exist. I've seen things no one should ever see. I've walked through cities that breathed, through silence that thought, through the end of what we used to call humanity. I helped end it. Or maybe I just started something worse. If anyone finds this, don't follow the light. Don't listen to the hum. The signal is patient, and it remembers. End log. They said the signal was gone, that the world was safe again, but in the dark corners of the airwaves, I can still hear it, whispering, waiting. Somewhere out there, a new transmission has started. Someone's trying to wake it up again. And if what I saw was only the beginning, God help us all when the next phase begins. My name is Ethan Ward, former agent of a division that doesn't exist. And this was my story. For now, if you made it this far, you've heard the truth. The world's not as simple as they want you to believe. So if you want to know what really happens in the shadows, subscribe, turn on the alerts, stay with me, because the next story might already be happening. And when it does, I'll be waiting. Don't listen to the hum,